Chapter 1454. As the blood moon materialized, Qin Shuriwei did not stop his actions. He formed a hand seal and activated it with his mind. The hum of a saber rang out. The sound was extremely ancient. Crack! Then, as if unable to bear the sharpness of the air, the space split into two. Then, a treasured saber materialized. It had a forbidden aura, but compared to the eeriness and evilness of the blood moon, this treasured saber seemed exceptionally cold. It was colorless like water, crystalline like a diamond, and beautiful like the core of a star. A terrifying sharpness of air was produced, bringing with it unparalleled killing intent. Rugged, desolate, and ancient, soaring killing intent filled the sky. Affected by this, the entire five elements reincarnation diagram seemed to turn into a prison of death. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood flowed. At this moment, Qin Shuriwei finally used all of his techniques. The ultimate evolution of the luminous moon in the sky mystique, blood moon of lunar scourge. Fang Qingshan had just been commenting that if Qin Shuriwei had a formation, its power would change drastically. Didn't Qin Shuriwei know? This mystique was the Qin family's special mystique. He had long understood all kinds of changes. The changes in the formation that Fang Qingshan mentioned were not non-existent. However, Qin Shuriwei did not walk that path. He walked the path of destruction and establishment, sublimation to the extreme. In other words, the luminous moon would return to one, destroy everything, and then give birth to a new blood moon in the destruction. This kind of transformation was even more advanced than the combination of formations. Other than mystiques, Qin Shuriwei also revealed his own spirit treasure. Full Moon Heaven's Wrath Blade. This treasured saber had not even been used, but its power was already evident. This treasure was exactly the same as the sword that Fang Qingshan had obtained from the Divine Emperor's cave in the Crimson Heaven realm. They had both been grade 3, but due to accidental destruction, their grades had dropped. The only difference was that the sword had suffered less damage and could recover easily. The Heaven's Wrath Blade had been too damaged, so it had not been repaired. Of course, this was also because this was a treasure that Qin Shuriwei had obtained by accident. He had kept it as a trump card and did not expose it, nor did he use the Qin family's power to help repair it. Xiao Chan felt that a peak rank 2 treasure was suitable for him to use. If it reverted to rank 3, he might not be able to use it and be controlled by the saber. Furthermore, the Qin clan was not a monolithic entity. Once the clan's power was mobilized, the news of this item would definitely be leaked. Therefore, he decided to keep it a secret in the end and secretly nurture and heal himself. He would make other plans after he became a deity emperor. Let's not talk about this first. Qin Shuriwei's move had indeed exceeded everyone's expectations. Forget about the blood scourge. Everyone knew about the Qin family's special ability, but they didn't know that he had already grasped this ability. Full Moon Heaven's Retribution Blade was something he had not expected. What was even more unexpected was that this treasured saber seemed to be very compatible with this mystical ability. When used together, it was like adding wings to a tiger, and its power was definitely greater than 2. Qin Shuriwei. I didn't expect him to have such a card up his sleeve. Looks like everyone has underestimated him. Yeah, with the strength he's showing now, not to mention the shaky 5th place, he can even fight for the top 3. Sure enough, the disciples of these big families are not easy to deal with. Although Qin Shuriwei was trapped in the 5 elemental reincarnation diagram, because of Hao Yue's self-destruction, there was a flaw in the reincarnation diagram. Even if it was repaired, it could not be repaired immediately. Moreover, what kind of people were there? If they could block ordinary and weak people, how could those deity emperors, core disciples, and inner disciples block them? Moreover, Fang Qingshan did not have anything to hide, so everyone naturally saw what happened in the reincarnation diagram. Everyone was astonished by Qin Shuriwei's method of hiding it. Even Jiang Shan and Pang Bo's expressions became serious. Even they did not dare to say that they would be able to withstand this move. Not only was the Blood Scourge's physical attack very powerful, it could also evoke the sins in one's heart. No one could guarantee that they would be a perfect person, a good person, and not have any negative karma or sins. And the full moon heaven's retribution blade was the nemesis of these negative karma and sins. Once it was drawn out and the blade fell, there was no way to dodge, hide, or defend against it. Furthermore, it was completely countered by him, just like how negative karma was countered by negative karma. What a pity, what a pity. Fang Qingshan did not know what the others thought, and even if he did, he would not care. Qin Shiyue's move was indeed powerful, but it was a pity that he had chosen the wrong person to use it on against Fang Qingshan. This was because no matter if it was the Blood Scourge or the full moon heaven's retribution blade, they were completely useless against the red karmic fire lotus. The Blood Scourge could not evoke any negative karma or sins, as they had all been burned by the red karmic fire lotus. Even though the heaven's retribution blade was not bad, its grade had dropped, and it could not break through the red karmic fire lotus defense. If he had recovered to a level 3 treasure, he might have been able to use this move, but now, it was just so. However, all of this had happened in the blink of an eye. As Qin Shiyue took out the full moon heaven's retribution blade, it turned into a full moon and fused with the Blood Scourge. Whoosh! Then, all that could be seen was a flash of blade light streaking across the sky. It was so fast that it was impossible to describe how fast this blade was. It was as swift as a swan, as swift as a clap of thunder, so fast that one could only see a flash of light streaking across the sky. It was as if the distance between heaven and earth did not exist at all. Open. Facing Qin Shiyue's counterattack, Fang Qingshan was neither happy nor sad, neither shocked nor angry. He stomped his feet and let out a soft roar. The space beneath his feet was like a curtain, pulling outwards and revealing a crack. Endless auspicious lights and auspicious qi poured out from the inside without a sound. Suddenly, a red lotus bloomed. The stem of the lotus was as clear as jade, decorated with stars and the sun and moon. Layers of petals gathered towards the center, and billions of scriptures filled the air, rising into the air, and every word was cryptic. The raging karmic fire lotus was burning, but it seemed so peaceful and flawless. However, it also scared everyone away like a tiger, and they could only watch from afar. Red karmic fire lotus. Even though its grade was similar to the life and death gourd, its defense was unparalleled. There were very few things below level 3 treasures that could break through his defense. The reason why he could break through so quickly was actually because he had enough origin. It was not only because he was a direct descendant of the 5 creation green lotuses, but also because he had fused with the 5 elements flags and so on, and was watered with endless karma. Whoosh! A strand of extremely dazzling saber light descended along with boundless killing intent. The red lotus of Hellfire Lotus spun slightly, and its branches and leaves spread out. Endless power turned into a barrier in front of him. Dang! The heaven-splitting earth-splitting technique that he had expected did not appear. Instead, the sound of a great bell and metal clanging rang out. Following this, Qin Shiyue let out a scream. Since he could not hurt others, he was naturally hurting himself. An unprecedented rebounding force sent him flying. If not for Fang Qingshan showing mercy, even if he did not die, he would be half crippled. Chapter 1455. Qin Shiyue clearly hadn't expected that the trump card she had hidden for so many years, the trump card she viewed as her trump card, the trump card she had used to launch a desperate counterattack, would be so easily broken by Fang Qingshan. Furthermore, if it wasn't for the fact that this was a martial arts competition, a competition between disciples of the same sect, and if it wasn't for the fact that his opponent had shown mercy, he would probably be in deep trouble. Even if he didn't die, it wouldn't be any better. Even so, Qin Shiyue still felt terrible after being sent flying by the recoil. It wasn't just Qin Shiyue. Even the spectators hadn't expected this. Jiang Shan, Peng Bo, and the others even felt serious about Qin Shiyue's mystique. They weren't completely confident that they could take it on. Although they knew that Qin Shiyue's move was powerful, it was clearly impossible for it to deal with Fang Qingshan. However, they hadn't expected this result. The only good thing about it was the red lotus of fire that Fang Qingshan had revealed. This treasure wasn't inferior to Shui Yunjian's limitless pearl or cleansing cloud banner. In fact, its quality and foundation were even better. It also had unparalleled defense, and it had something to do with karmic fire. In actuality, Fang Qingshan had already revealed these methods when he was undergoing his tribulation. However, not many people had paid attention to it in the beginning. It was truly because the commotion was too great. When they did pay attention, they were hindered by the power of the Tao tribulation. In the end, if he were to be targeted by the Tao tribulation, not only would he harm Fang Qingshan, he wouldn't be able to get anything out of it. Putting all of this aside, Qin Shuriwei slowed down and coughed out a mouthful of blood. Then, she stood up with the support of the full moon heaven's wrath blade and let out a long breath. Then, she bowed to Fang Qingshan with some regret, some relief, and some admiration. Senior brother Fang is unparalleled. I am no match for you. I concede defeat. Senior brother, junior brother. The way he addressed Fang Qingshan was enough to show Qin Shuriwei's attitude. Seeing that Qin Shuriwei had fulfilled his promise and admitted defeat without any further pestering, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but nod to himself. If Qin Shuriwei didn't know what was good for him, then he wouldn't blame him for teaching him a lesson. As for now, it was obviously good for you, good for me, and good for everyone. He returned the bow with a smile. Thank you for letting me win. Crash. As soon as they finished speaking, the two of them stomped their feet and used their respective techniques to leave the ring, returning to their original ring. The technique imparting elder knocked the jade chime and smiled. The first round is over. Fang Qingshan wins. 1 round. Who's up for the next challenge? Allow me. As soon as Elder Zhugajin finished speaking, someone immediately replied. The challenger this time is D.E. D.E. and Qin Shuriwei were somewhat similar. If Qin Shuriwei was said to be at the bottom of the top 10 inner disciples, then D.E. would be at the bottom of the dark horses. Of course, this was before Qin Shuriwei revealed his trump card. Although his trump card was useless against Fang Qingshan, it might not be useless against Shang Guanjin and the others. However, this might not be the case. Just like how even Qin Shuriwei had concealed his methods, Shang Guanjin, Li Mubai, and the others might have as well. Everyone had concealed their methods. In the end, it would only be known who was stronger after the battle. Speaking of which, since Qin Shuriwei challenged Fang Qingshan in the first round, then D.E. would be challenging the top inner disciple, Pang Bo. It wasn't that he didn't want to challenge Fang Qingshan. It was just that although they might not have a close relationship, just like how Qin Shuriwei represented the top 10 inner disciples, he represented the dark horses. Since Fang Qingshan was the leader of the dark horses, he naturally wouldn't be the first to challenge him. Moreover, Fang Qingshan had just experienced a challenge. To him, it might not be that exhausting. However, to others, it might not be the case. After a big battle, not only would they be injured, they would also need to recover their qi. Therefore, the qualifying rounds were different from the previous rounds. One couldn't use the tactic of taking turns to fight. No, not taking turns to fight. One couldn't use the tactic of taking turns to fight the same person continuously. Therefore, for all these reasons, he naturally challenged Pang Bo. Alright, just like Fang Qingshan, since the other party had challenged him, Pang Bo naturally had no reason to avoid the challenge. Please, please. Pang Bo and D.E. shifted their feet and turned into a ray of light that landed on the battle ring. D.E. clasped his hands together and made the first move. Unbounded beasts. Following D.E.'s roar, his 5 fingers clenched into a fist as a punch rumbled forth. His fist was large and sturdy. It was golden green in color and mottled with Daoist symbols. As the fist landed, the space was filled with the roars of beasts. It was as if thousands of ferocious beasts had walked out from the dust of history. Fearless, they destroyed the space and time of the universe. Unbounded beasts was not unbounded longevity. This was an elephant-shaped technique. It imitated the era of beasts and the scene of thousands of beasts in the sky. It described the Tao of beasts, the survival of the fittest and the survival of the fittest. There were no rules. It was the naked law of the jungle. The more beasts imitated, the more powerful they were, and the more powerful they were, the more powerful this technique would be. Legend had it that there was an emperor of beasts who was an expert during the era of beasts. He had practiced this technique to the extreme. When he punched, it was as if an era had arrived. It was domineering. Di's technique naturally couldn't compare to the legendary emperor of beasts. However, one could also see densely packed beasts running and roaring. There were dragons, phoenixes, kunpangs, elephants, tigers, rats, cats, and all kind of other forms. A bunch of impractical things. However, facing this punch, Pang Bo's expression didn't change. He humped coldly and punched out as well. Rumble. In terms of aura alone, he had already won the punch. The wind from the punch howled, suppressing the roars of the beasts. In that instant, the entire world seemed to have been frozen, as if someone had pressed the pause button. However, in the next moment, everything shattered under that punch. The 10,000 roaring and galloping beasts seemed to have not existed at all under that punch. They were instantly shattered. It was truly a power that could kill gods and crush mountains and rivers with a single punch. Seeing this, Di's expression changed. Without hesitation, he quickly retreated hundreds of meters. Even so, he still had difficulty breathing when the wind from the punch hit him. He wasn't the only one. Even Fang Qingshan's expression turned serious when he saw this. Although this wasn't the first time he saw Pang Bo in action, he couldn't tell anything from the previous matches. One could tell the whole picture just by looking at one spot. From this punch, Fang Qingshan could tell Pang Bo's strength. He could only say that he was indeed the eldest senior brother of the inner sect. He was indeed capable. His path was somewhat similar to Wu people's, which was the path of body tempering. Without using spirit treasures, his body was the best weapon. Compared to Fang Qingshan, his body was a few levels stronger. He didn't cultivate essence soul mystiques and only cultivated combat techniques. His punches and kicks were tough and unstoppable. Chapter 1456. Damn it. Di cursed under his breath as he stared at Pang Bo with an ugly expression. Although he knew that he was no match for Pang Bo, he hadn't expected the gap to be so huge. Due to the previous exchange between Qin Shuriwei and Fang Qingshan, as well as the fact that even though Di was a dark horse, he wasn't a newcomer like Fang Qingshan. Thus, he had a deep understanding of Pang Bo. That was why he used the boundless beasts of the 10,000 Beast Fist. The reason why he had risen to prominence and become a dark horse was that he had obtained a cave dwelling in the ruins of the Beast Era by chance. He had combined the Dao Intent Sect's Dao Intent cultivation method and specialized in the Beast Dao Intent. The combination of the two was like adding wings to a tiger. Since it was the Beast Era, one could imagine that the main cultivation method was naturally the body refining path. The 10,000 Beast Fist was one of the top combat techniques. The Boundless Beast Fist was one of the ultimate moves. As mentioned earlier, if one cultivated it to the extreme, it would not be a problem for one to summon and recreate the Beast Era. Unfortunately, he had clearly not cultivated it to perfection, although he was already very powerful when dealing with others. However, when facing Pang Bo, who also cultivated the body refining path, it was not enough. Even Jiang Shan, the disciple of the Jiang family, was suppressed by Pang Bo in every aspect, let alone him. In terms of cultivation, Pang Bo had already reached the peak of the immortal realm. Although he had just broken through, he was already better than Fang Qingshan. In terms of talent, he was also a proud son of heaven in the Dao Intent sect. In terms of opportunities, not to mention the spiritual treasures that came to him, he had obtained quite a number of good things over the years of exploring the secrets of the secluded world. In terms of resources, although the Pang family was not as powerful as the Jiang family, it was still a first-class force in the Dao Intent sect. Therefore, there was nothing much to say about Di's body refining technique being broken by his punch. On the other hand, even though Pang Bo had broken Di's mystic art with a single punch, he did not continue attacking. Instead, he pressed on with his victory, not giving Di a chance to catch his breath. First of all, He was conceited. Not to mention he didn't even put Jiangshan in his eyes. This was the aura he had cultivated after many years of being an inner disciple to look down on the world. The only one here that made him serious was Feng Qingshan. It was because of Feng Qingshan's heavenly tribulation that gave him a lot of pressure. That was why he could break through to the peak of a mortal realm so fast. Then there was the matter of face. As the eldest senior brother of the inner sanctum, it was fine if he had to deal with Feng Qingshan. However, if he had to deal with an ordinary dark horse, he would inevitably lose face. Fame was good, but sometimes it could also be trapped by fame. Finally, when Qin Shuriwa challenged Feng Qingshan earlier, Feng Qingshan had held back at all times. Could it be that he was inferior to Feng Qingshan? Pang Bo was also prepared to let Di throw 3 punches. Di naturally didn't know about this. If he did, he probably wouldn't thank Pang Bo. After all, generally speaking, letting him throw 3 punches. From this, it could be seen that he didn't care about him at all, although the truth seemed to be the case. After the unbounded beast was broken by Pang Bo, although Di was a little discouraged, he didn't lose confidence. Beasts of 10,000 body. Di opened his mouth and swallowed. The beasts that were broken by Pang Bo's fist intent returned like tired birds returning to their nests. As the light flowed, fierce beasts, demonic beasts, and savage beasts floated above Di's head, roaring at the sky. In an instant, these fierce beasts disappeared, and Di himself seemed to have turned into an ancient fierce beast. In the blink of an eye, the aura around Di became incomparably ferocious. His aura rose by more than a level. A wave of ferocious astral energy gathered around his body. It was filled with wildness, savagery, violence, and bloodthirst. Di's body was like that of a ferocious beast. Scales and sharp claws appeared on his body. If one didn't look at him and only sensed his aura, one would know that he was a ferocious beast. Seeing Di's transformation, Pang Bo couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Interesting. If the unbounded beast was said to be the manifestation of 10,000 beasts using magic, the strength of a battle technique depended on the amount of magic, the number of beasts, the grade of the beasts, and the divine will of the beasts. Then the beasts of 10,000 body was said to transform one's body into a beast. Moreover, one would bear the weight of 10,000 beasts, turning into the sovereign of 10,000 beasts. Once it was used, the requirements on one's primordial spirit would increase. If one's primordial spirit was not strong enough, not only would it be useless, but it would also be affected by the chaotic nature of the beasts. If one's primordial spirit could control the beasts, then one's strength would skyrocket. He was clearly the latter. His eyes were still clear, and he wasn't affected by the beasts. There was only a high will to battle. There were 2 reasons for this, other than Di's strong will. One was that when he first obtained this battle technique, he was enlightened by someone and experienced it once. Hence, he was able to control it like an old horse. The other reason was that he had a treasure similar to the soul pearl that Feng Qingshan obtained together with the hibernation pearl. It could strengthen and protect one's primordial spirit. Taking a step forward, the space beneath his feet cracked. The entire arena seemed to be shaking, and layers of waves appeared. Roar! He punched out. No, it was no longer a punch, but a claw. As the claw descended, it was accompanied by a mysterious trajectory. Vaguely, there was a roar that seemed to be able to pierce through time and space. Di seemed to have transformed into the true sovereign of 10,000 beasts. His body expanded uncontrollably, and he stood tall. Scales covered his body, which shone with a golden light. He had the body of a tiger, the head of a phoenix, the horns of a dragon, the legs of a qilin, the wings of a kuanpeng, the shell of a xuanwu, and the tail of a peacock. He was as majestic as hell, like the sovereign of 10,000 beasts. Seeing this, Pang Bo nodded slightly. It was obvious that he approved of this move. Roar! Then, Pang Bo bluntly punched out to meet this punch. There was no strange phenomenon, no other laws. There was only the sound of the wind from the punch, and there was only the pure will of the fist. But it was such a simple punch. There were no changes, and it did not contain any strange laws. But in an instant, the wind and clouds changed, and the sky and earth collapsed. It was a pure punch, pure power, but it was ferocious. The punch shattered time and space. The punch fell, and it seemed to be able to pierce through the boundless origin of the void to the ends of the universe. Buzz! A muffled thunder sounded. This time, Dee's punch was not like the last time. It did not collapse upon contact, and it was not a complete defeat. However, it was not much better. Under Pang Bo's punch, it lasted for several breaths of time before it finally shattered. Wah! Dee spat out a mouthful of blood. He was directly sent flying by Pang Bo's punch. Like a broken sack, he slammed into the walls of the arena. There was not a single part of his body that was not damaged. Fortunately, he did not directly faint. Chapter 1457. I don't believe that the gap between us is that big. Although Dee's injuries were not serious, he was in a terrible mood. He was furious. There was no harm without comparison. He was not afraid of not knowing, but he was afraid of comparing. With Qin Shiyue's brilliant performance before him, he was no different from a clown in comparison to his own challenge. Even though Qin Shiyue had also failed, she had forced Fang Qingshan to reveal his reincarnation ring and 5 elements reincarnation diagram, as well as the red karmic fire lotus, a defensive spirit treasure that was comparable to a top-notch second-grade treasure. There was also karmic fire. He had gained a lot, especially that last trump card. Although he had lost, it was a glorious loss. If he had not met Fang Qingshan, even if it was someone else, Jiang Shan, Yin Sha, or even Pang Bo, it would not have been so easy. Let's look at himself. Myriad Beast Fist. It was a famous inherited battle technique from the Myriad Beast era. The Myriad Beast Emperor had used this technique to conquer the world and was rarely defeated. But in his hands, it was simply entrusted to the wrong person. A pearl covered in dust. Whether it was Boundless Beasts or Myriad Beast Enhancement, they were all easily broken by Pang Bo. This was actually nothing much. Qin Shiyue's previous attack was also easily blocked by Fang Qingshan. The key was that he did not force Pang Bo to use any of his trump cards. He was still fighting as usual, throwing one punch back and forth as if he was invincible. How did he accept this? Now, he was no longer comparing himself with Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo, but with Qin Shiyue. He could not compare himself to the previous two, but could he not compare himself to Qin Shiyue? Actually, what he did not know was that although Pang Bo only threw one punch back and forth, he did not seem to have used any powerful trump cards. He only used ordinary methods. However, what Dee did not know was that this was actually Pang Bo's trump card. It was just that other people separated ordinary methods and trump cards, while his trump card was the same as ordinary methods. It all depended on how much strength he used. But obviously, Dee didn't know this. Not to mention him, besides Jiang Shan and a few other people in the inner sect who really understood him. Before Fang Qingshan showed up, Pang Bo was the eldest senior brother of this batch of inner disciples. The other inner disciples could only look at him in awe. Putting all of this aside, Dee was not discouraged at all, even after the 10,000 beasts failed. Instead, he became even more determined. I'd like to see if you're still so relaxed after using this trump card. Dee said fiercely. Dee took out something that looked like a pearl, a sarira, and a drop of blood. It was completely blood red, sparkling like jade and glistening. As soon as this item appeared, a vast aura burst forth and engulfed the entire area. This power was so strong that it made everyone feel like they were facing the sect leader once again. The phenomenon that overflowed from it was exactly the same as when Dee executed the Boundless Beasts earlier. This thing looks like this is Dee's trump card. I didn't expect that the 10,000 Beast ruins he got not only contained the 10,000 Beast fist, but also a drop of a master's essence blood. Yeah, and this master is probably a half-step emperor, just like the sect leader. There were many knowledgeable people present. As soon as Dee took out this item, everyone guessed what it was. You know you can't do it, but you still do it. Yeah, it's a waste to use this thing like this. Not only can it not bring out the effect it should have, but it will also injure itself before it can hurt anyone. You can't say that. It's not as good as slowly absorbing the experience of fighting with a master. After understanding Dee's trump card and seeing his actions, everyone had different opinions. Some people thought that he should admit defeat and not fight head-on. Anyway, he would lose even if he used his trump card. Most importantly, the correct use of this item should be to slowly absorb it. But another group of people thought that although it was a bit unwise, it was worth it. To Dee, being able to go all out against Pang Bo was an experience that was very valuable. Just like when Feng Qingshan went to the Divine Emperor Cave Mansion. Putting that aside, Dee swallowed the Beast King's essence blood right after taking it out. Pang Bo raised his eyebrows, but did not do anything else. In fact, if he wanted to stop Dee, it was not too late. However, Dee had said that he would let Dee make 3 moves first. Although he did not say it out loud, he could not lie to himself. Moreover, to be honest, he was quite interested in Dee's 10,000 Beast Fist. Although his previous 2 moves were a waste of his combat skill. But with the addition of this essence blood, it should not disappoint him. Just as Pang Bo thought, Dee did not disappoint him after swallowing the Beast King's essence blood. If it could be said that using the 10,000 Beast augmentation art earlier was just a facade, obtaining the form, but not the intent, then after swallowing the blood essence, Dee seemed to have truly transformed into a supreme Beast King. His aura soared again. However, this time, even the secret treasure protecting his essence soul seemed to be of no use. In an instant, Dee's entire body emitted a ferocious aura. If it was not for the sliver of clarity in his eyes, it was likely that everyone would suspect that he had not been possessed, or that he had completely fallen into the enemy's hands. The Beast King's essence blood didn't just contain a large amount of essence blood. More importantly, it also contained the Beast King's will. Because of this, the 10,000 Beast Fist was able to reach the greater success stage from the first glimpse stage. It was also because of this that one could only absorb it slowly. Not only would it waste a lot of its effects, but it would also put oneself in danger. Die! As Dee shouted, he threw a punch. The 10,000 beasts roared as they followed suit. If the previous 10,000 Beast Fist was a group of scattered soldiers, then the current 10,000 Beast Fist was a group of elite soldiers. Good timing. Seeing this, Pang Bo's eyes lit up. He did not dodge and threw punches well. There was still no strange phenomenon or miscellaneous attributes, but the fist wind was sharper, the fist intent was more condensed, the fist momentum was more majestic, and the fist strength was more unparalleled. On the other side, Dee's 10,000 Beast Fist was indeed his trump card. This time, it was not broken by Pang Bo's punch. Instead, it was even more impressive. Clang, clang, clang. The 2 fists collided in the void like lightning. The fist's strength was so strong that it penetrated countless layers of the void. The entire arena was shaking. It should be known that this was a level 3 Supreme Treasure arena. If it was the previous arena, this exchange would have directly torn the arena apart. Both of them were only at the peak of Immortal Realm. Yes, after swallowing the Beast King's essence blood, Dee's cultivation had caught up to Pang Bo's. However, his combat strength had obviously surpassed the Immortal Realm and reached the beginner God Emperor level. Chapter 1458. Pang Bo's cultivation base had reached the peak of Immortal Realm. Because of Feng Qingshan's sudden appearance, he felt pressured. Moreover, he had just broken through to the peak of Immortal Realm after accumulating for many years. However, the peak of Immortal Realm was the peak of Immortal Realm. It was the cultivation base closest to the God Emperor realm. In addition, he was talented and had a firm heart. He specialized in the way of the fist, not relying on external objects, and the mighty power belonged to himself. Therefore, even without spiritual treasures, his combat strength had already reached the level of a beginner divine emperor. Without spirit treasures, his physical body was the best weapon. He lacked transformations, but he could already break 10,000 techniques with one punch. There was no need for transformations at all. Although his combat strength was only at the level of a novice god emperor and could not last for long, it was already very good. As for D.E., he was originally far from it, but who asked him to have a drop of blood essence of a half-step divine emperor? Although it was only a drop, it was a peak god emperor, a half-step god emperor existence. For such an existence, even a single strand of hair would be thicker than a leg. In particular, the further one went, the higher one's realm would be. The gap between each minor realm was no less than the gap between the major realms before it. In fact, it might even be greater. Back in the Crimson Heaven realm, Kong Chang's two talismans were just one of the Divine Emperor's divine powers and a phantom image, but they were already so powerful, not to mention the vital essence blood. Blood essence, primordial spirit, and Chi-Si represented essence, energy, and spirit. They were considered the three most important treasures of a human body. Furthermore, the three complemented each other. There was me and you and me. Apart from being able to return to the heaven and earth once the Chi-Si was destroyed, the primordial spirit could also be reborn after leaving the physical body. The essence blood had the same effect, but the effect was not as good. Its most important function was that it was equivalent to a heavenly treasure. Furthermore, it was a heavenly treasure that had the ability to comprehend. With the help of this item, De's cultivation level skyrocketed. He dare not say that he had directly broken through to the God Emperor realm, but he was at least on par with Pang Bo. His cultivation level was not high enough to control this power. In fact, because there was still a will within the essence blood, he was no longer the one controlling this power. Instead, this power was controlling him. But it was precisely because this will was controlling him that the 10,000 Beasts fist became instinctive. If he had used it alone, its might would have been shattered by a single punch from Pang Bo. However, his control over his essence blood and Will had undergone a qualitative leap. He had gone from being a rookie to being evenly matched. Therefore, he was able to fight well against Pang Bo Dong Dong Dong. Every punch landed on flesh, and every punch tore through the air. For a time, balls of dazzling fist lights burst out, and the light was blazing. It was like numerous suns had exploded, and it seemed as if the heavens and the earth had darkened. The fist wind exploded, and the fist force was like an arrow that pierced through the layers of space-time. There was a roar of fist intent, as if two savage beasts were fighting. There was no technique, only instinct, yet it was full of mystery. There was no technique because he was being controlled by the will of the blood essence. Although the will of the blood essence was the will of the beast monarch, it was still a weak part of it. In addition, there was also his original primordial spirit, which intersected with each other. Naturally, there was no technique. Pang Bo did not change at all, nor did he need to. He just punched back and forth. However, one punch could split the heavens, one punch could change space-time, one punch could change fate. This was a simple exchange of punches, but it seemed to contain the laws of heaven and earth. In the end, the great Tao was the simplest. They have met their match, and the general has met his talent. Everyone's eyes shone brightly, and their hearts swayed. Even some of the elders who had just entered the deity emperor realm felt like they had learned a lot. This was evidence. Sadly, this was only an illusion. Or rather, the good times did not last long. What was borrowed was still borrowed. What wasn't yours was still not yours. If Di had encountered Jiang Shan or Li Mubai instead of Pang Bo, it would be hard to tell who would win. However, just like when Qin Shuriwei challenged Fang Qing Shan, he picked the wrong opponent. The beast monarch's blood essence was indeed powerful, and its explosive power was astounding. Even Pang Bo had to treat it with caution. Before, no matter what technique it was, no matter who it was, they were all broken by a single punch. Now, however, they were exchanging blows, and the battle was going well. However, as time went on, the situation began to change. The scales of victory were tipping towards Pang Bo. To be more accurate, this was already destined. As long as Qin Shiyue's and Di Yi's trump cards could not end the battle, then the final result was self-evident. The longer the battle dragged on, the more likely it was that they would be exhausted to death. Pang Bo gradually got used to Di's attacks and began to understand the myriad beast's fist. As for Di, the clarity in his eyes had begun to fade. Evidently, as the will of the blood essence deepened, he was beginning to turn into a puppet. His physical body was like a sieve and could no longer bear the burden. In the end, before he could defeat Pang Bo, he would first explode and die from the beast monarch's blood essence. Okay, that's enough. After a while, he saw that Di was getting crazier and crazier. His body was like a fountain of blood. He was already at the point of death struggle, while Pang Bo was already casually moving his hands, as if he was casually knocking on a chess piece to drop a lantern. Elder Zhuge Jin and the others hurriedly intervened and stopped the battle. It wasn't that it was unfair, but if they didn't stop it, Di would be finished. Because of the beast monarch's blood essence, Pang Bo had an easy time dealing with Di, but that didn't mean he could suppress Di easily. In fact, Di had long regretted his decision. His intestines were green with regret, but it was too late. He was controlled by the beast monarch's will and couldn't even shout out that he had lost. As a mighty beast monarch, he would rather die standing than live kneeling, especially against an ant-like existence like Pang Bo. How could he admit defeat? Therefore, Zhuge Jin and the others had to intervene. Otherwise, if the battle dragged on, only death awaited Di. The second battle, Pang Bo wins, 1 win. As the words left her mouth, Zhuge Jin made her move. In an instant, Pang Bo and Di, who were locked in a fierce battle, suddenly stopped moving as if someone had pressed a pause button. Following that, the space around the arena violently trembled. Everyone saw a giant hand form from spiritual energy materialize from existence to nothingness, from illusion to reality. It took form in a fraction of a second. That giant hand was extremely mystical. Its entire body was as translucent as jade, as if it was formed by nature. Vaguely, it seemed to be filled with endless Tao aura. An indescribable majesty, profoundness, and awe-inspiring aura enveloped the heavens and earth. Under that aura, not to mention Pang Bo and Di, even the spectators, including Fong Qingshan and the others, shuddered. Their bodies tensed up as if they were facing a great enemy. This was the strength of a peak divine emperor. Even if it was just the tip of the iceberg, it was enough to make people's hearts race. Rumble. Chapter 1459. The higher-ups of the Tao will school, from the headmaster, vice-headmaster, to the elders with real power, such as the Elder of Discipline and Elder of Discipline, were all peak God Emperors. Plus, they weren't ordinary peak God Emperors. Ordinary peak God Emperors were no better than early God Emperors. The blood in Di's hand came from a peak God Emperor Beast Emperor. Although it was the Emperor of Beasts, it might not be stronger than the Tao will School's Elder of Discipline. The reason why the Tao will School was able to maintain its position in the top 100 on the Supreme Force's ranking despite not having a God Emperor was because of these people. After all, the foundation had to be converted into actual strength. Otherwise, not only would it be useless, but it would also attract unwanted attention. The 4th level treasure was a trump card, a nuclear weapon, a deterrent that couldn't be used lightly. These people weren't like the chaotic world of Shang that Fong Qingshan encountered back then. The few clans relied on resources to become God Emperors. Every single one of them was an expert that grew up amidst killing. From the moment Zhuge Jin spoke to the moment he made his move, everything happened in the blink of an eye. Just as Fong Qingshan and the others were still exclaiming over Zhuge Jin's powerfulness, the mysterious giant hand had already grabbed Di. At this moment, the giant hand was like the Buddha's 5-finger mountain, and Di became the monkey's son. Though Di was being controlled by the Beast Emperor and seemed to have lost his intelligence, his instincts were still there. He seemed to have sensed danger. An even more powerful aura surged forth, as if it wanted to break free from its restraints. Sadly, how could the monkey's son escape from the Buddha's palm? Not to mention the fact that he was merely a drop of blood. Even if this Beast Emperor was at his peak, he might not be able to match up to Zhuge Jin. Who would win and who would lose would only be determined after a fight. At this moment, he wasn't even a dragon in shallow waters or a tiger out of a mountain. He was merely a drop of blood. How could he be Zhuge Jin's opponent? Therefore, Di's animalistic nature erupted. He roared and his face was ferocious. However, it was as if he was struggling before death. His voice and expression were full of anger and unwillingness. Sadly, no matter how unwilling and angry he was, it was all in vain. The moment Zhuge Jin made her move, the result was already decided. Di was caught in Zhuge Jin's big hands. Boundless dazzling lights formed into runes and instantly poured into his body. The Beast Emperor's blood essence, which had been wreaking havoc ferociously and ruthlessly, was being suppressed like a tidal wave. In the end, it was compressed in the area around Di's heart, forming a seal. It was enveloped in layers of layers, completely trapping it within, unable to erupt any further. Actually, Zhuge Jin was not only saving Di, she was also helping him refine the blood essence. Although the essence blood was sealed, it was sealed in layers. As long as Di undid a layer of seal in the future, he would be able to refine a strand of blood essence. Once all the seals were undone, the blood essence would be completely refined. Not only was it safer this way, but it was also faster. If it were an entire drop of essence blood, it would be very difficult for him to separate it with his current strength. If he wanted to separate it, he would have to constantly be on guard against the Beast Monarch's will. Thank you for your help, Elder. Seeing your brother's fist technique is unparalleled, and your strength is unparalleled. I concede defeat. With Zhuge Jin's help, coupled with Di's extraordinary will and the protection of a secret treasure in his primordial spirit, he quickly recovered from his shock. He first expressed his gratitude to the cultivation imparting elder, then personally admitted defeat. Finally, he felt a wave of lingering fear. Humans live by their pride. Trees live by their bark. Previously, in order to show that he was not inferior to Qin Shuriwei, he did not fight for his pride. Disregarding everything else, he took out the Beast Emperor's blood essence and swallowed it. One had to know that he usually had to tread on thin ice in order to refine this item. He usually relied on comprehension, using it like incense. Even if he were to separate a strand from the cocoon, it was an extremely troublesome and time-consuming task. As for the refinement afterwards, it was not easy either, and each refinement would take a long time. But this time, he actually swallowed it in one go. It was truly a blessing that he did not die from his body exploding and turning into a puppet. Now that he thought about it, he could not help but be shocked by his audacity and recklessness. Although he lost this time, and because he consumed the Beast Emperor's blood essence and was sealed, the injuries on his body were still there. Coupled with the fact that he was already at the bottom, this time's intersect ranking competition probably had nothing to do with him. But he was not depressed. Riches came from danger, and the rewards were not small. It could be said that his gains this time far exceeded his expectations. First, he fought to his heart's content with Pang Bo, the intersect's eldest senior brother. Although he was controlled by the Beast Emperor's will, his body's instincts were still there. This was a precious wealth of experience that could not be exchanged for money. Once he digested it, not to mention his cultivation, his combat strength would definitely soar, especially his understanding of the myriad beast fist. Even if it was not as superb as before, it was still much better than when he first started. Then, he swallowed the Beast Emperor's blood essence and was attacked by the Beast Emperor's will, almost becoming a puppet in the end. But in the end, it was also a rare experience and gain. His primordial spirit and will were greatly tempered. It was the same as Feng Qingshan using lightning to temper his will. Finally, Elder Zhuge Jin sealed the blood essence for him, allowing him to refine it more quickly and safely. It could be said that this time's intersect competition was not in vain. Skipping over this match, the following matches were just as exciting. Feng Qingshan and Pang Bo were seasoned fighters, and everyone had already challenged them once. Therefore, everyone did not point to the two of them for a challenge. Or else, if others misunderstood that everyone was trying to tire them out, That would be embarrassing. While they could not compare to these two, they still cared about their reputation. Therefore, the following matches became like this. The Dark Horse and the original top 10 inner sect disciples challenged each other. For example, this match was Yin Sha challenging Shang Wanjin, and the next was Li Mubai challenging Emperor Lu. De, on the other hand, was unchallenged. He was heavily injured, and even if he consumed medicinal pills, he could not recover so quickly. Moreover, the Beast Emperor's blood essence was sealed, and his trump card was useless. There was nothing left for him to challenge. De being ranked 10th was no surprise. Qin Shuriwei, on the other hand, did not have to worry about this. However, she would only be around 8th and 9th, and would not be able to get any higher. After a series of back-and-forth challenges between them, logically speaking, the winner would challenge someone stronger. However, the situation was the exact opposite. The loser went to challenge the two ultimate powers, Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo. Because they had already failed, they did not think too much about their rankings. They might as well challenge Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo to see how far apart they were. At the same time, they wanted to see if they could force the two to reveal more of their trump cards and provide a reference for future challengers. Chapter 1460. Zheng Xian, Jiang Shan, and the others weren't shameless enough to take turns to exhaust Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo. However, they didn't want the two to win too easily. That would make them seem incompetent. At the same time, they wanted to see how big the gap was between them and the two. They also wanted to know what their trump cards and bottom lines were. Therefore, Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo accepted 3 challenges respectively. As the Dark Horses, Zheng Xian and the others naturally challenged Pang Bo. The original top 10 inner sect disciples naturally challenged Fang Qingshan. Therefore, Fang Qingshan faced Shang Wanjin, Li Mubai, and Jiang Shan. Pang Bo faced Zheng Xian, Yin Sha, and Emperor Lu. Although their challenges didn't cause much trouble for Fang Qingshan and Jiang Shan, it was an eye-opener for Fang Qingshan. After all, he had just broken through to the immortal realm. Moreover, he was at the peak late-stage immortal realm. Although his foundation was solid, he wasn't as stable as the primordial chaos realm. Sometimes, it wasn't always a good thing to increase one's cultivation level too fast. At least, one wouldn't know every realm so well. This was also because Fang Qingshan had created the immortal section of the All Heavens Tao verification technique. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to control his power so quickly if he had cultivated other cultivation techniques. Although he was at the peak late-stage immortal realm, he could only use 70% of his combat power. On the other hand, sparring with others and observing them was the fastest way to help him understand and control this realm. After the ranking matches, regardless of whether he was challenged or observed, whether it was Shang Wanjin's card summoning, Li Mubai's halo shrouding, or Jiang Shan's punches and kicks, he had better control of his power. Although he didn't increase his realm or combat power much, he still benefited a lot. As for observing Pang Bo and the others, he had a clearer understanding of them. Zheng Xian's literary Tao, Yin Sha's sword Tao, Emperor Li's netherworld Tao, and even Pang Bo's pure fist Tao. Fang Qingshan's eyes flashed with light and enlightenment from time to time. He could use other people's knowledge to improve himself. After witnessing their methods, Fang Qingshan, especially the World Tree clone, benefited even more. The ranking competition of the top 10 disciples was indeed exciting. Although it had only been 2 battles, and although Qin Shuriwei and Fang Qingshan's battle prowess and De's and Pang Bo's battle prowess weren't equal, the spectators were still mesmerized by the battle. Needless to say, Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo's combat prowess was within expectations. Qin Shuriwei and De's outburst was beyond everyone's expectations. Whether it was Qin Shuriwei's divine ability, Blood Scourge, the Grade 3 Full Moon Heavenly Scourge Blade, or De's incomplete Grade 4 divine ability, 10,000 Beast Fist, or the Peak God Emperor Beast Emperor Blood Essence of a Half-Step Emperor, they were all eye-opening. This was the ranking competition of the top 10 disciples, and it was also the battle where everyone became famous. Once he performed well in this aspect, in the future, he would be like a carp leaping over the dragon gate, a dragon soaring in the sky. It all depended on today. All the hustle and bustle in the world is for profit, and all the hustle and bustle in the world is for profit. As long as he performed well, the sex rewards and the blessing of the sex luck would be great benefits. As for fame, it was needless to say. In this battle, if he performed well, he would become a true disciple, and in the future, he would be able to compete for the position of sect master and elders with real power. Furthermore, with outsiders like Drifting Snow Palace present, his fame would not only spread within the sect, but also throughout the universe. After all, they weren't insignificant. The weakest among them had the cultivation base of mid-immortal realm. Pang Bo, Fong Qingshan, and the others weren't far from the God-Emperor realm. In the universe, although there were many God-Emperors, they basically didn't move around in the void anymore. Except for existences like the Sword Emperor of Storm, who would open the Sex Gate to give lectures every once in a while, there was basically no trace of them. Even those sects and clans with venerable emperor ancestors, ordinary people couldn't find them. Therefore, God-Emperors were the peak combat prowess on the surface. And the peak God-Emperors of the major forces were all people with real power. They wouldn't act unless it was a major event. Early and mid-God-Emperors were the true pillars of strength. For many small forces, early God-Emperors were already the peak combat prowess. Therefore, Fong Qingshan and the others weren't insignificant or insignificant. Their existence might not be able to influence the outcome of the battle, but they could at least influence the evaluation of the Daoul sect. Then again, Qin Shuri Wei and Di's two battles had opened the curtains for the entire ranking competition. With a good start, it had stimulated the fighting spirit of Zheng Xian and the others. Naturally, they wouldn't let Fong Qingshan and the others get all the glory. Even if they couldn't fight for first place, as long as they performed well, there would still be rewards. How exciting. I'm not weaker than anyone else. In the field, after Di, Yi, and Pang Bo retreated, Shang Wanjin exclaimed in admiration. She walked out calmly, and her clear voice rang out. She cupped her hands towards Emperor Lu. Junior brother Lu, do you dare to fight with me? I like to try. Even if Shang Wanjin didn't issue a challenge, Emperor Lu would. Therefore, without hesitation, Emperor Lu accepted the challenge. They were also somewhat interesting. It could be considered a friendly exchange of pointers. The previous round was a challenge from the original top 10 disciples, and the next round was a challenge from the Dark Horse side. The two sides took turns to fight, and no one was at an advantage, and no one was at a disadvantage. With a flick of their sleeves, they turned into two streams of light and appeared on the arena. Please, please. Both of them cupped their fists and attacked at almost the same time. They weren't like Fong Qingshan and Pang Bo, who were conceited about their strong fighting abilities and would even let their opponents have 3 moves first. The gap between them wasn't that great. Moreover, who knew what tricks they had up their sleeves? If he were to fall into a disadvantageous position because of his modesty and fail in the end, he would lose a lot of face. Even a lion would use all its strength to fight a rabbit. Therefore, both of them went all out the moment they entered the arena. Kill! Kill! 2 metallic sounds of battle rang out and collided with each other. Shua! With a flash of light in Shang Wanjin's hand, a card shot out like a dart towards Emperor Lu at lightning speed. Almost at the same time, Emperor Lu bellowed and took a step forward. With a loud rumble, the gate of heaven opened wide. In the next moment, a pitch-black pagoda appeared above his head. It was 49 levels tall and glowed like black jade. Death, burial, and darkness will burst forth. Duo. Emperor Li's heart shook. As the pagoda shook, endless black spiritual power turned into ripples that swept out in all directions like a huge wave. Hua! Just as Emperor Li's black magnetic field swept out in all directions and collided with Shang Wanjin's card. Shang Wanjin's card was like dry firewood encountering a raging fire. It exploded with a loud bang and turned into a prairie fire. Fire splattered in all directions, covering the sky and earth. Chapter 1461. Shang Guanjin's card could be considered an innate mystique. As his cultivation level increased, the number and quality of the cards would increase as well. These cards were all sealing talismans. As a whole, they were talisman treasures that could be used repeatedly. As long as one sealed mystiques, battle techniques, spiritual treasures, and living creatures in them, one could crush the card at any time and use it. When not in use, it could be turned back into a card. It was simple and convenient. It was truly a must-have for home and travel. When this card was thrown out by Shang Guanjin, it collided with Emperor Li's mystique, and an intense chemical reaction occurred. In an instant, the heavens and earth were split into two colors. On one side was boundless darkness, filled with a deathly stillness that seemed capable of burying the heavens. It was as though an eternal night had descended. There was no time, no space, no light, and no living creatures. On the other side was boundless fire. There was the true Samadhi fire, the true sun fire, the ghostly flame of the netherworld, the cold Een flame, the red lotus karmic fire, the heavenly tribulation lightning fire. Chi-Chi, the beautiful sea of fire collided with the boundless black gas, and an earth-shattering explosion erupted. Shang Guanjin's card had a mystique of the sea of fire sealed within it, while Emperor Lu had used a mystique of the abyss of hell. On one side, it burned the skies and boiled the seas, looking like it was going to burn everything. On the other side, it demonized the heavens and earth. Everywhere it went, it was hell. In an instant, it all depended on who had the upper hand. Logically speaking, fire, light, Buddha, thunder, and other extreme yang mystiques and battle techniques should be effective against mystiques of hell, abyss, and demon territory. Indeed, when the boundless sea of fire met the black gas, it was like trying to put out a fire. Immediately, a piercing, sizzling sound could be heard. There was a faint whistling sound, and the already monstrous sea of fire rose to a height of 100 zhang. The originally evenly matched situation suddenly seemed like the flame had the upper hand. However, this was just the surface. Just like how righteousness subdued evil, yang subdued Een, water subdued fire, and light subdued darkness, it was the same the other way around. Evil could subdue righteousness, Een could subdue yang, fire could evaporate water, and darkness could cover light. As the boundless sea of fire burned the black gas, he seemed to be burning even more vigorously. His origin energy was also being consumed. Even if the flames were burning the black gas was also extinguishing the flames. Both sides were losing out on their own. In less than 10 breaths of time, the infernal abyss had turned into a desert, and the boundless sea of fire had also become strong on the outside. All right. Generally speaking, in order to achieve victory as much as possible, everyone preferred to fight familiars rather than strangers. The reason for this was naturally because only by knowing oneself and knowing the enemy could one emerge victorious in 100 battles. Only by understanding the other party would one be able to better deal with the problem and adapt to the situation. This way, he could fight with ease. But if he wanted to gain more, he would have to beat the raw and not the mature. It meant that you were unfamiliar with it, that you needed to put in more effort, and that you could not be careless at all. After all, it was better to be safe than sorry. A moment of carelessness could lead to eternal damnation. If one were to fully immerse oneself in the battle, one's potential would be developed to the maximum. In the end, regardless of whether one won or lost, as long as one survived and digested the battle, one would definitely benefit greatly. Shang Guanjin was originally one of the top 10 inner sect disciples, and opponents were hard to come by. Generally speaking, only the top 10 inner sect disciples could exchange blows with him. They were all too familiar with each other's techniques, and as such, there was no point in fighting. Now that there were dark horses like Emperor Lu rising to the top, he was filled with excitement. Again, it was not just him. Wasn't Emperor Lu the same? As the saying went, resources were easy to come by, but opponents were hard to come by. A good opponent, especially one that was on par with him, was especially hard to come by. Therefore, the two of them did not stop at all. After the first wave of attacks did not have any effect, the second and third wave of attacks were launched almost at the same time. Without probing, they went all out. At the same time, they knew that each move would not be able to win the battle, and so they had no intention of stopping. The cards in Shang Guanjin's hands shot out like flowers scattered by a fairy. No one knew how many cards he had in his hands. In an instant, there was a boundless sea of fire, a boundless ocean, a surging tide, a collapsing sky, a devouring black hole, a pagoda, a huge bell, a treasured sword, a treasured mirror, a dragon, a phoenix, a qilin. Mystiques, battle techniques, living creatures, spiritual treasures. As long as one could think of it, there was no card that could not be conjured. On the other side, Emperor Lu was similarly conjuring all sorts of underworld mystiques and battle techniques. Hellish ghostly voice, boundless blood moon, death wave, devouring abyss, hand of hell, white bone pagoda, spirit of the dead banner. The two of them, the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each displayed their own divine arts. They were both extremely domineering and ferocious. One was ever-changing and had hundreds of methods, while the other was always the same. Both of their mystical techniques were profound, far surpassing their peers. In an instant, the crowd was dazzled. It was especially dazzling for the people from the smaller forces. Shang Guanjin's cards were like talisman treasures. Although they might not be as good as real spiritual treasures, they had the advantage in numbers and were easy to use. They had hundreds of techniques and were hard to defend against. The pagoda above Emperor Li's head was called the Ghost Domain Pagoda. It was the same as Zheng Xian's Qinqiu Brush and Qin Shiyue's Full Moon Heavenly Scourge Blade. They were all Tier 2 Supreme Treasures with the foundation of a Tier 3 Supreme Treasure. Good heavens, the strongest trump cards of many smaller factions were no better than this. And in the Dao Will sect, the weakest trump cards of the top 10 inner sect disciples were probably at this level. It was truly a case of comparing people to each other, and comparing goods to goods, one had to throw them away. 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. The rumbling sounds were endless. After some time, the situation on the battlefield suddenly stopped. Everything returned to normal. Both Emperor Lu and Shang Guanjin stood at one end, looking a little wretched. The pagoda above Emperor Li's head was shaking. His face was pale, and his legs were weak, as though his body had been hollowed out. In comparison, Shang Guanjin was in a much better state. Although he was also in a wretched state, with a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, he still had the strength to fight. Actually, the reason for this was because his cards had the upper hand. Shang Guanjin's cards not only had many tricks up their sleeves, but they were also fast and did not consume much spiritual power. Therefore, as time went on, Shang Guanjin naturally had the absolute advantage. Emperor Lu took 2 deep breaths. After he calmed down, he stared at Shang Guanjin. The indignation in his eyes gradually faded and was replaced with calmness. I live up to my reputation. I have lost this time. However, it is unknown who will be the winner next time. Shang Guanjin smiled lightly when she heard this. Her smile was full of confidence. Since I can beat you once, I can beat you a second time. Emperor Lu did not say anything else. He snorted and kept the pagoda above his head. With a flash of light, he instantly left the arena. Seeing this, Shang Guanjin shrugged and left as well. Chapter 1462. Indeed, the former top 10 inner sect disciples live up to their reputations. Yeah, these dark horses rose to prominence too recently. Their foundations are still lacking. First it was D.E., then Emperor Lu. It seems like Yin Sha, Zhang Xian, and even Fang Qingshan are about the same. That's for sure. Moreover, Fang Qingshan and Zhang Xian are different. Yeah, one of them has the timeless arc, while the other is a veteran disciple of 2 batches. Their foundations are extraordinary. The battle between Emperor Lu and Shang Guanjin had ended, but the discussions outside did not stop. From the previous 2 challenges, the dark horses seemed to be slightly inferior. The morale of those who had high hopes for the former top 10 intersect disciples soared. This was also because the Dao sect had a good atmosphere. Otherwise, the situation would be even more intense. At this moment, the elder of imparting arts, Zhuge Jin, walked out and knocked on his jade bell. His voice was neither loud nor soft, but it spread throughout the entire arena. Third challenge, Shang Guanjin wins, 1 win. As soon as Zhuge Jin finished his sentence, he retreated. At the same time, Li Mubai walked out. His white robes fluttered in the wind as he strolled leisurely. He was truly a peerless gentleman. I am Li Mubai. Junior brother Yin Sha, please enlighten me. Li Mubai's every move was full of rhythm and beauty, and his voice was neither fast nor slow, full of magnetism. If it had been Lingbo, Bu Yanran, and the rest, even if they were not completely mesmerized, their fighting spirit would not be that strong. Even if it was an ordinary person, they would not have such a strong fighting spirit. Indeed, he gave off the feeling that he was not willing to be an enemy, but a friend. But he was facing Yin Sha, a person who only had killing intent in his eyes. His demeanor was like a blind man's, although he did not do it intentionally. All right, if Li Mubai was a warm man, then Yin Sha was a proper cold man. He was like an iceberg, exuding a cold aura. His words were concise, and his face expressionless. Junior brother, be careful. Li Mubai did not attack immediately like Shang Guanjin and Shang Guanjin. Instead, he warned Yin Sha politely before attacking. It was as though he was trying to be polite before resorting to force. Shua. As soon as his voice fell, a series of colorful halos suddenly appeared on Li Mubai's body. Like a peacock spreading its tail, it was spectacular. Some of the halos were transparent, some were earthy yellow, some were black and white, and so on and so forth. But all of them naturally emitted a kind of glaze-like brilliance. It was so bright that it could dazzle one's eyes. Of course, its power was equally terrifying. If one were to put oneself in their shoes, perhaps just this wave of attacks would cause one to fall into an endless hell. It could be noticed that these rings of light seemed like the grand Tao of nature, and they contained the truths of the heavens and the earth. When one took a rough look at them, they seemed crystalline, translucent, and brilliant, but when one took a closer look, one would notice that they were formed from numerous profound markings of the Tao. They seemed like numerous altars that were connected to the quintessence of the heavens and the earth, and they drew upon the quintessence energy of the heavens and the earth. With a thought from Li Mubai, the series of halos immediately swayed and shone brightly. Like a gentle breeze blowing across a calm lake, ripples spread out in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye, but the destruction it brought was like a storm. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire arena, including Yin Sha. The next moment, the entire space tightened as if it had frozen, just like what had happened to Qin Shuriwei, who had been trapped in the 5-element reincarnation diagram by Feng Qingshan. This was the space-stopping halo. Once this item appeared, although it could not compare to the restraining power of Feng Qingshan's Bell of Chaos, it was not inferior to the Permitha Bridge. 100,000 mountains appeared above Yin Sha's head, and boundless gravity pressed down. This was the gravity halo. This gravity was so strong that it seemed like a chaotic world was pressing down. Ordinary primordial chaos realm people would probably be crushed into pieces by this pressure alone. There is also the yin-yang origin magnetic force under his feet, which transformed into a black hole that emitted a boundless devouring force that dragged Li Mubai's feet to the ground. This was the origin magnetic halo. There were also shackles on his body that intertwined with each other, like a spider web. This was the seal halo. Good heavens, Li Mubai might look like a handsome young man, but when he fought, he was really not careless at all. He used a big move right off the bat. He knew that Yin Sha specialized in the sword Dao. The sword was light and agile, while the saber was heavy and heavy. Of course, some swords were not light and agile, and they were even heavier and more domineering than the saber, such as the heavy sword and the broadsword. However, it was obvious that Yin Sha did not take this path. Instead, he took the conventional path. Since he wanted to take the light and agile path, speed was a key. There was nothing in the world that could not be overcome by speed. This was also applicable in cultivation. Just look at Pangu, who had cultivated the law of gravity to the extreme. It was unyielding and indestructible, suppressing fate, karma, space-time, and reincarnation. Although there were very few people who could do this, since there was unstoppable in front of them, it was clear that it was possible to do this. Speed was indeed an aspect of Yin Sha's methods. The speed of his sword was so fast that one could not react in time. If one missed, one would immediately escape thousands of miles away. This was a matter of self-preservation. Li Mu Bai, on the other hand, wanted to break Yin Sha's arm right off the bat. If Yin Sha's speed was restricted and he was trapped on the spot, his strength would be greatly reduced, even if he was not a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Furthermore, to ensure that nothing went wrong, Li Mu Bai released a wave of halos right off the bat. There was gravity, magnetism, space, and seal. Fortunately, Yin Sha was not easy to deal with. Even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit. This was especially true for people like him. He did not make a move, but when he did, it was like a thunderbolt. Therefore, the moment Li Mu Bai made his move, Yin Sha made his move as well. Therefore, the silhouette that was enveloped by the halos was no longer Yin Sha himself. It was merely an afterimage that was left behind because it was moving too fast. Turning into a shadow, Yin Sha moved between the gaps. Even though the entire stage seemed to be enveloped by a halo of light, Yin Sha was completely unaffected by it. Chang. His sword was unsheathed. At first, it was only a gentle breeze, followed by the sound of mosquitoes. Then, the sound grew louder as the sword was unsheathed. When the sword was completely unsheathed, a crisp and clear hum of the sword, akin to the cry of a phoenix or the roar of a dragon, resonated between heaven and earth. The hum of the sword formed waves of sound that could be seen by the naked eye. A flash of sword light, like the rising sun, pierced through the darkness of dawn, became bright but not blinding, and finally became so bright that no one could open their eyes. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Chapter 1463. Even someone like Li Mu Bai would strike like a bolt of lightning, let alone someone like Yin Sha who didn't know how to be courteous or modest. Naturally, he would strike with a killing move. The sword moved with the person, and the person moved with the sword. The moment the halo descended, Yin Sha's sword had already descended towards Li Mu Bai. At this moment, Yin Sha's sword had the same effect as Pang Bo's. It was simple and didn't have many changes. It was just a simple stab, but it seemed to contain thousands of changes. The Great Tao was simple. Perhaps it was because it was simple and didn't have any other fancy changes that it was pure, plain, and extraordinary. However, Pang Bo didn't rely on external objects and relied on his own body. Yin Sha's sword was with him, and his life was more important. However, as the sword stabbed forward, millions of crystal-clear sword lights merged into one. It wasn't sharp, and it didn't cause much of a commotion. The void only parted like a curtain, and it didn't seem to have much destructive power. However, one would only realize how terrifying it was when facing it. As the saying goes, a dog that bites doesn't bark. This kind of sword light that didn't seem sharp was much more difficult to deal with than those that showed off their abilities. Naturally, it was more powerful as well. As the saying goes, a divine object conceals its light, but once it explodes, its power would increase by at least 3 times. Protect. Facing Yin Sha's attack, Li Mu Bai's expression didn't change as he uttered a single word. As soon as he finished speaking, a screen of mountains and rivers suddenly appeared in front of Li Mu Bai. The rivers on it were like dragons soaring into the sky, and the cliffs were like shields that connected the sky. The two were entangled together, surrounded by mountains and rivers, exuding a mysterious Taoist rhyme, forming an indescribable barrier. Halo of mountains and rivers. Although it wasn't as powerful as Feng Qingshan's Red Lotus of Hellfire, it wasn't any weaker than an average intermediate rank 2 defensive treasure. Most importantly, Li Mubai had used several halos to imprison Yin Sha, so this defensive halo naturally wasn't the only one. In the next moment, before he calculated victory, he was already thinking about defeat. Even if it was to prevent his demeanor from being ruined, he had to defend himself to the death. Therefore, behind the mountains and rivers, two more defensive lights rose. The first was a pagoda. It was octagonal, had 9 levels, and had 4 sides. There were no signs of it being carved by an axe. It was as if it was made by nature. Countless mysterious runes were carved on it, and it was glowing with a strange light. It seemed to be able to draw endless Taoist rhymes from the void. Behind the pagoda, a canopy floated in the air, spreading out. It was brilliant like a beautiful embroidery, radiating with brilliance like the great void. Yin Sha's attack was indeed sharp and fast, and it even had the power to break through defenses. The barrier of mountains and rivers was instantly torn apart, followed by the pagoda and then the canopy. But with such a delay, under the layers of obstructions, Yin Sha's attack had been weakened to the extreme, and Li Mubai was no longer at his original position. Bang! 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 For a moment, the two of them fought fiercely, but neither of them could do anything to the other. Yin Sha was like a slippery squid, coming and going without a trace. Sometimes he was in the east, sometimes he was in the west, sometimes he was up, and sometimes he was down. He pointed east to west, pointed west, and then pointed north. He could even switch positions, making it hard for people to figure out where he was. If you thought he was a shadow, then you might think he was a real killer. If you thought he was a killer, then you might think he was just a feint. Whether Li Mubai wanted to imprison or attack, he couldn't land a hit on Yin Sha. All he could see was a shadow floating around him, attacking him from time to time. However, Yin Sha's attacks couldn't do anything to Li Mubai because he couldn't break through Li Mubai's defense. It wasn't that he couldn't break through Li Mubai's defensive halo. It was just that when he broke through it, he was already exhausted. Li Mubai had new tricks up his sleeves. Either his attacks forced Yin Sha to retreat, or he retreated far away, or a new defensive halo rose up. If he didn't retreat decisively, he would fall into a disadvantageous position the moment he hesitated. At their level, once they fell into a disadvantageous position, it wouldn't be easy to turn the situation around. Once they couldn't turn the situation around, defeat was only a matter of time. As such, the situation naturally fell into a stalemate. In the end, it became a battle of attrition, just like the previous battle between Shang Guanjin and Emperor Lu. However, in the previous battle, Shang Guanjin had the last laugh because of the uniqueness of her card. This time, Li Mubai and Yin Sha were evenly matched. Halos exploded and sword light flashed. After an unknown period of time, the halos dissipated and the sword light faded. Everything returned to its original state. Junior brother, your swordsmanship is exquisite, and your killing power is unparalleled. How about we call this a draw? Li Mubai's clothes and hair were a little messy, but he didn't look pathetic. Instead, he looked handsome. He took a deep breath and said to Yin Sha, "All right." Yin Sha's hand, which was holding the sharp sword, was trembling slightly. He was a man of few words and nodded silently. After fighting for such a long time, the two of them understood each other very well. Neither of them could do anything to the other. Although they still had trump cards, they were different from the others. Yin Sha did have a trump card, but it was like an assassin's fatal blow. It was similar to Di Yi's swallowing of the essence blood of the Beast King. It was either succeed or die. This was an arena competition, not a life-and-death battle. Hence, it wasn't appropriate for him to use it. What about Li Mubai? He wasn't a competitive person, and he was kind of like water. Hence, although he had a trump card, he didn't use it. As usual, he stopped after displaying enough strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to say that he could challenge Pang Bo if he went all out. It was hard to say who would be stronger between him and Jiang Shan. However, for Yin Sha to be able to fight Li Mubai to this extent, it was no wonder that he was one of the dark horses that Fang Qingshan favored the most. Although the two of them didn't use their trump cards, which disappointed the crowd, the excitement of this battle was undeniable. At the very least, No one dared to look down on them. The third round ends in a draw. Neither side wins nor loses. After Zhuge Jin came out to conclude this battle, the fourth round began. Junior brother Jiang Shan, please. This time, it was Zheng Xian who challenged Jiang Shan. Senior brother Zheng Xian, please. In the past, no one had taken a liking to Zheng Xian. In fact, many people did not even know who he was. But now, who dared to look down on him? At the very least, Jiang Shan had long since regarded him as an existence on the same level as himself. One shouldn't think that Zheng Xian was a senior disciple from the previous generation. Even if he became famous overnight, it was still a bit embarrassing for him to hang out with a new disciple like Jiang Shan. However, one couldn't say that. One had to know that Jiang Shan's generation was one of the strongest. Chapter 1464. In the School of Tao Will. Those who wanted to join the outer sect could be recommended and take the test. As long as they were not from hostile forces or had committed many crimes and were talented, there would be no problem. There were two ways to enter the inner sect. One was to be like Jiang Mingyue and Fang Qingshan, who were recommended due to their outstanding talent. The other way was for outer sect disciples to break through to the immortal realm and automatically enter the inner sect. To become a true disciple in the inner sect, apart from strength, loyalty, and contribution to the sect were more important. As long as one entered the inner sect for a period of time and reached the late immortal realm, they could apply for the test and complete a true disciple trial to become a true disciple. As such, while true disciples had a higher status than inner disciples, some of the ordinary true disciples might not be as strong as the top ones in the inner sect. As such, it was not embarrassing for Zheng Xian, who had been a disciple for 2 generations, to mix with the new disciples. After all, most true disciples could not compare to the top 10 inner disciples. Once they became true disciples, they would not be ranked among the top 10 true disciples, but they would have the ability to challenge the top 10 true disciples. Fang Qingshan and Peng Bo, in particular, already had the ability to be one of the top 10 disciples. As for those who were in the same generation as Zheng Xian, while many had become true disciples earlier, apart from a few, they could not compare to Zheng Xian, who had accumulated a lot of experience and caught up later. Please, please. The two of them cupped their fists and attacked at the same time. Jiang Shan took a step forward, clenched his fist, and punched out a picturesque scene. However, when the punch landed, a dynasty came crashing down. The picturesque scene, the people were healthy, no one picked up anything on the road, and no one closed their doors at night. Songs and dances celebrated peace. The scholarly officials governed the government, the internal management of the court, the military generals expanded the borders, and the external management of the rivers. Everything was put to good use, and people were put to good use. It was a glorious age, and all nations came to pay homage. The Dragon Master, the Fire Emperor, the Bird Officer, the Human Emperor, the first to write, to wear clothes, to give up the throne to the country, there was Yu Tao Tang, to punish the people, Zhou Fa Yin Tang, to sit in the court to seek the Tao, to bow and level the seal. Zheng Xian did not move, but the Qinqiu brush in his hand did not stop moving, and he also sketched out a glorious age. The only difference was that when Jiang Shan fought, the Son of Heaven would sit on the throne, and the 4 seas would submit to him. It was a unified world. Wherever the sun and moon shone, wherever the rivers flowed, everything would become a territory. Zheng Xian, on the other hand, was wielding the power of an ancient sage emperor, a sage emperor who ruled the world together. There was no such thing as a family. There were only the capable and the wise who were respected. The whole world worked together and abdicated. There was no tyranny of an emperor, but there was a flash of personality. The other was a centralized system of power. Those who complied would prosper, and those who opposed would perish. One was that the people were the most important, followed by the country and the ruler. Moreover, Jiang Shan walked the path of body transformation martial arts, incomparably tyrannical. As for Zheng Xian, he walked the path of divine runic arts, convincing others with reason. Although their methods were different, they were all extremely powerful. Of the two of them, one was originally ranked second among the top 10 inner disciples. Although he'd been suppressed by Pang Bo for his entire life, not only did he not feel discouraged, but he was also indomitable. The other was an old disciple who had calmed down and accumulated a lot of experience. Both of them were not easy to deal with. Under one strike, neither of them could do anything to the other. Regarding this, whether it was Jiang Shan or Zheng Xian, or even the surrounding audience, they weren't surprised. This wasn't a battle between Fang Qingshan, Pang Bo, Shui Yunjian, and the others. Even weaker opponents could defeat their opponents in a single move. Before they revealed their cards, the disparity between them was nearly equal. If they fought from the start, it would be strange if one side was unstoppable and the other side was utterly defeated. Thus, Jiangshan didn't hesitate at all. He punched out again and again. There was an emperor issuing orders, his words carried out by the law. There was a temple being destroyed and a mountain being destroyed. There were imperial concubines and concubines. There were princes and grandsons leaving the palace. There were carriages coming to the court. As for Zheng Xian, he casually spat out words like thunder. There was a pleading for the people, not fearing life or death. There was a world of harmony. There was a selection of the virtuous and capable. There was an emperor abdicating and retiring. There was, for a time, one side showed the great unification of the world. Under the heavens, all lands belonged to the king. Those who ruled the land were the king's subjects. If the king wanted his subjects to die, the subjects had no choice but to die. On the other side, it showed the torrent of the literary Tao. Countless people with lofty ideals wrote books, passed down knowledge, enlightened the people, and restrained the imperial power. Rumble. The two powers collided in midair. Golden light and white light intertwined. It was like a strange, yet harmonious yin-yang fish that kept spinning. It was a little similar to the 5 elements of yin and yang. The two of them didn't hold back like Yin Sha and Li Mubai. The former didn't care much about their reputation. One only cared about gains and losses, while the other cared more about freedom. The latter didn't care about the empire. How could those who could cultivate the Jiangshan martial Tao show weakness? As for Zheng Xian, he had long said that an old steed was still in the stable. As such, the two of them fought for real right from the start. Not only were they going to clash with their powers, but they were also going to compete with their own spells, and wills. Naturally, they were going to use their treasures as well. Zheng Xian had used a Chinchou brush in the previous competitions, but he took out a ruler in his fight against Jiangshan. It was called the Verdant Blood Ruler, and it was as clear as crystal. It was milky white, with hints of green and red mixed within. However, it didn't stand out as if it was the source of righteousness. In terms of grade, it was the same as the Chinchou brush, only at the pinnacle of the second level. However, its foundation was one level higher, and it was even better than the heavenly wrath of the full moon. It was similar to the sword in Kong Chang's hand. It was not just Zheng Xian. Jiangshan naturally had no lack of treasures. He was different from Pang Bo. While they both walked the path of martial arts, they were not as extreme and pure. They would not rely on anything other than themselves. While he did not have any grade 3 treasures, he had no lack of treasures like the ruler and the sword. Furthermore, there were 2 of them, one for offense and one for defense. Most importantly, these 2 supreme treasures had the foundation of a level 4 supreme treasure. The defensive treasure was called the umbrella of the common people. Actually, both the fist of the mountain and the umbrella of the common people came from the lineage of a supreme force known as the Great Qian Dynasty. That force was so huge that it controlled hundreds of chaotic worlds at its peak. Even the Dao school at its peak could not compare. It was a pity that the world was divided for a long time, and, united for a long time, it would be divided. In the end, an accident happened, and it still fell apart. Speaking of which, the defensive power of the umbrella of the common people was immeasurable. It was one of the 3 most important treasures of the Great Qian Dynasty at the time. The Imperial Jade Seal, the imperial sword, and the umbrella of the common people. The imperial jade seal was a symbol of power used to suppress fate. The imperial sword was an offensive treasure, and the umbrella of the common people was a defensive treasure. When the umbrella was opened, it was truly colorful. The sun and moon shone brightly, and there were thousands of auspicious lights. Most importantly, it could mobilize the power of the people or even the entire imperial dynasty. It was practically invincible. Unfortunately, with the fall of the great Qian dynasty, the treasure was also damaged like never before. Chapter 1465. This is The People's Umbrella and the Four Ocean 8 Desolation Sword. I didn't expect the two level 4 treasures of the great Qian dynasty to fall into Jiang Shan's hands. It's a pity that they were damaged too badly. Most importantly, they don't have the providence and power of the great Qian dynasty anymore. With the experience of Elder Zhuge and the others, they immediately recognized the origin of the two treasures in Jiang Shan's hands. They were shocked at first because they were level 4 treasures after all. The level 4 treasures of the Dao, sect, were one of the most important reasons why they could maintain the situation they were in today. Fortunately, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The two treasures were no longer what they used to be. Not only did they drop in grade, but they had also damaged their source. Not only did they need all kinds of treasures to repair them, but they also needed to establish an emperor dynasty and gather the providence of the emperor dynasty. Only then could the power of the treasures be restored. It was easy to establish a top-notch sect, but it was not easy to establish a top-notch emperor dynasty. There were very few emperor dynasties on the Supreme Forces leaderboard. The reason for this was that emperor dynasties were different from sections. They were more domineering, occupied more resources, and had a stronger desire for control. The destruction of the great Qian dynasty back then was probably related to this. Putting that aside, the two level 4 treasures, the People's Umbrella and the Four Ocean 8 Desolation Sword, had damaged their source after the destruction of the great Qian dynasty, causing them to drop to level 2 treasures. Moreover, it was very difficult to repair them. Without a corresponding force or emperor dynasty, it would be impossible for such treasures to be restored to their original state. Even if emperor dynasty wanted to repair them, it would cost too much, so they might as well refine another one. Because of this, Jiang Shan had gotten the two treasures with the foundation of level 4 supreme treasures. That was also the reason why Jiang Shan dared to use them boldly. Otherwise, how could he not know that a man's wealth would get him into trouble? By then, even the patriarch of the Jiang family and the higher-ups of the Dao sect would not allow him to waste the treasures, let alone outsiders. Speaking of which, there were two treasures, one for offense and one for defense. The one for defense was naturally the myriad people umbrella, while the one for offense was the Emperor's sword, the Four Seas 8 Desolation sword. The sword was simple yet elegant, and its entire body seemed to be made of platinum glass. It was shaped like a real dragon with 2 horns, 3 eyes, 9 claws, and 12 fingers. The Tao symbols were like dragon scales, interweaving one after another. The dragon's mouth spat out a sword blade that was 8 feet and 1 inch long. It seemed like it could pierce through the heavens and penetrate the universe. One side of the sword was engraved with mountains and rivers, the 4 seas, and 8 wastelands. The other side was engraved with tens of thousands of people worshiping and gathering together. Just like the umbrella of people, this sword was a great treasure of the great Qian dynasty. With the fall of the great Qian dynasty, it had suffered unprecedented damage. Even though it had recovered a lot, it was still a top grade 2 treasure. Hearing the exclamations of Zhuge and the other disciples, people from the smaller forces, and most of the people fell silent. My goodness, I'm not afraid of not knowing what's good. I'm afraid of comparing goods. Others would at most have a top-notch level 2 treasure. These 2 people actually had 2 of them. That was not all. The most important thing was that these 2nd grade treasures actually had foundations of 3rd grade and even 4th grade treasures. What else could they say? Zhang Xian and Zhuge Jin didn't know about the complicated feelings of the others. Even if they knew, they wouldn't care. At this moment, they only had eyes for each other. Wong. With a clang, the ancient sound of a sword being unsheathed rang out. The four-ocean, eight-wasteland sword was unsheathed. It didn't have the sharpness of ordinary sword-type treasures, but it gave off a deep sense of history. Wong. Suddenly, with the sound of the sword, it seemed to have crossed a long time and space. A trembling and even subservient aura burst forth. Almost everyone present, including those who cultivated the way of the sword and those who had sword-type treasures, unsheathed their swords involuntarily. They were trembling as if they were out of control. This was almost an instinct. Third-level treasures and above were still fine. When they were unsheathed, they could only compete with the sword-type treasures, but treasures below that all submitted. It had to be said that the four-ocean, eight-wasteland sword was indeed a fourth-level treasure and an emperor's sword. Even though it wasn't as powerful as it used to be, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. It was still domineering. However, Zhang Xian wasn't easy to deal with either. The One Dao ruler in his hand and the Azure Sea loyal heart were not to be outdone. The ruler drew a mysterious trajectory in the air, affecting the righteous chi of heaven and earth. In an instant, everyone seemed to suddenly become righteous. They felt remorse for the mistakes they had made and even wanted to sacrifice their lives for righteousness. This was even more powerful than the enlightenment of Buddhism. In an instant, the ruler's power and the sword chi complemented each other. The sword chi was ferocious, but it couldn't avoid the ruler's attack. The Thousand Autumns brush was sharp, but it couldn't break through the protection of the people's umbrella. The two seemed to have fallen into the same predicament as Li Mubai and Yin Sha. It seemed like they would once again tie. However, whether it was a tie or not, no one cared anymore. They only cared about whether the challenge was exciting and whether they could gain something from it. The answer was obvious. If this wasn't exciting, what would be? Fortunately, the two of them hadn't reached the God-Emperor realm yet. Otherwise, it would be even more exciting. Once they broke through, they would immediately step over the early God-Emperor realm and reach the early God-Emperor realm. At that time, they wouldn't be weaker than the early God-Emperor realm experts who had been cultivating for many years. As for what they could gain, it was even simpler. Looking at the battlefield, the experts below the late immortal realm widened their eyes. They didn't want to miss a single detail. Their primordial spirits were circulating crazily. To them, being able to see Jiang Shan and the others fight with their full strength was a rare opportunity to learn. Not to mention increasing their combat experience by watching them execute divine techniques, Dao insight, and spirit treasures. If they were able to pry into a trace of it, then it would be greatly beneficial to them when they cultivated similar divine techniques and Dao insights in the future, and it might even be extremely helpful to them when they broke through. They could even see a level 4 supreme treasure. Even if it used to be a level 4 supreme treasure, it was enough for them to brag. After all, many people wouldn't be able to see a true level 4 supreme treasure for their whole lives. Not only them, wasn't Fang Qingshan the same? His eyes were half closed, as if he was half asleep. The heaven gate opened, the auspicious clouds rose, and the 3 flowers and the 5 chi shone, creating endless strange phenomena. Apparently, he had also gained a lot. Not to mention the others, the situation on the battlefield was in a deadlock. It seemed like it would end in a tie. However, what happened next was once again out of everyone's expectations. Zhang Xian burst out. Yes, after he took out the Emerald Sea Pill Heart Ruler, he used another trump card. The situation was full of twists and turns, which made people's hearts jump up and down. Chapter 1466. Everyone knew that Jiang Shan and Zhang Xian were not to be trifled with. The former was able to stand firm under Pang Bo's continuous attacks, and he even had the level 4 Umbrella and 4 Ocean 8 Desolation hidden within. If it were not for the fact that his current level of cultivation was insufficient, and if it were not for the fact that he was still no match for Jiang Overlord despite being a disciple of the Jiang clan It would not be a problem for him to build a dynasty with the full support of the Jiang clan. That way, not only would he be able to repair the two treasures, but he would also have the fortune of the dynasty on him. His cultivation would also improve by leaps and bounds. Not to mention Pang Bo, even Jiang, Overlord, and many of the ordinary elders in the clan would not be able to compare to him. The latter, on the other hand, had been silent for many years. Once he rose to prominence, he would truly be known throughout the world. Putting aside the two treasures, the Chinchou brush and the blue sea pill ruler, he had also brought out his trump card, the torrent of humanity. No one knew where it started or where it went. It pierced through time and space, understood cause and effect, and was not afraid of reincarnation. There was no fate. The past had been predetermined, the present was happening, and the future was still changing. A mighty river rolled forward with an indomitable will. Anything that stood in its way would be assimilated or annihilated. There were those who worked hard to open up the mountains and forests, and those who created words and clothes. There were those who abdicated the throne and gave up the country, and those who opened up the land and unified the land. There were those who shared the same language, those who shared the same principles, and those who shared the same principles. For a time, the myriad of living beings in the sky worshipped, praised, and prayed, and they transformed into a surging torrent that came from the beginning of time. It was vast and boundless, and there were emperors, generals, people with lofty ideals, and all living beings. There were natural and man-made disasters, the birth of the chaos, the cataclysm, the golden age. There were righteousness, responsibility, and wisdom. There were evil, hesitation, and retreat. There were great perseverance, and virtue. In an instant, the atmosphere of literature and righteousness were like the tide. The scenery changed accordingly. There were rivers and mountains below, and the sun and stars above. To the people, it is called vast and boundless, filling up the heavens. It connected the 9 heavens above and the abyss below. It was endless. What a great torrent of humanity. How incredible. Seeing this scene, Fang Qingshan's pupils constricted, and then he let out a sigh of admiration. He squinted his eyes and observed carefully, not daring to miss a single detail. Compared to the others, Fang Qingshan had experienced the torrent of history and had benefited greatly from it. It was precisely because he had experienced it that he knew how rare and precious he was. That was why he wanted to control it even more. He had only accidentally triggered the torrent cleansing once, and he had already benefited greatly from it. It saved him a lot of time and energy. There were even many things that could not be achieved with just time and energy. They were all fated chances. On the other hand, Zhang Xian seemed to be in complete control of the situation. How could he not be shocked and impressed? As expected of someone with great wisdom, great perseverance, and great luck, he was able to endure loneliness and wear the crown. Even though Zhang Xian's control over the human path torrent could not compare to the one that Fang Qingshan had accidentally triggered. However, it was only an accident. No matter how small or weak the torrent of humanity was, it was still his. He might not be able to use it anytime and anywhere, but at least he didn't need to rely on luck. Moreover, as he grew and grasped it, he would be able to catch up sooner or later. As expected, my senses were right. Senior brother Zhang Xian is impressive. Fang Qingshan sensed and analyzed the torrent of humanity as he made up his mind. After the intersect competition, it seems like I should interact with him more. If I can control this torrent of humanity, it will definitely benefit me greatly. Fang Qingshan was someone who had experienced the baptism of history, so he was very clear about the benefits of this thing. When he saw Zhang Xian execute it, the first thing he thought about was how he could control this torrent of humanity. That way, not only would he have a powerful trump card, but would also have unexpected benefits for tempering his essence spirit, polishing his cultivation realm, and even deriving cultivation techniques. However, this torrent of humanity was clearly Zhang Xian's trump card. Fang Qingshan didn't know if Zhang Xian would tell him. Although he only wanted Zhang Xian to learn from him, he didn't want Zhang Xian to impart the torrent of humanity. However, If he taught his disciple, the master would starve to death. If he learned it himself, could this move still be considered his trump card? Even if he had no ill intentions towards Zhang Xian, would Zhang Xian be at ease knowing his face? Just as Fang Qingshan's mind was going through 1,000 thoughts, the situation on the field was basically clear. Zhang Xian, who had executed the torrent of humanity, was unstoppable. A river that flowed from the land of origin to an unknown future swept across the world, encompassing the universe and the ages. Anything that came into contact with it would be like a wave, either assimilated or crushed into dregs. It surged towards Jiangshan, engulfing him in the river. Jiangshan had the people's umbrella on his head. He held the Emperor's sword in one hand and the true dragon fist in the other. His fists smashed through the ages, and his sword slashed through the ages. Billions of sword chi crisscrossed, and countless fists wantonly cut through the river. It was as if a dam was blocking the river, or a bead curtain was rolled back, or it was completely evaporated. However, it was all futile. The dam blocking the river was just like drinking poison to quench thirst. The bead curtain was rolled back, and the counterattack was even stronger. Completely evaporating could be repeated. At that moment, Jiangshan was like an elephant that had fallen into a swamp. He had the dragon-slaying art, but there was no place for him to use it. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. No matter how powerful his fists were, no matter how exquisite the mountain and river fist was, no matter how sharp the 4 8 desolation sword was, no matter how profound his swordsmanship was. Once he fell into the torrent of humanity, it was like rivers returning to the sea. Although huge waves were set off, no matter how big the waves were, could they break through the sea? On the other hand, although he had the protection of the people's umbrella, and its defensive power was indeed astonishing, this treasure did not have the support of the people. He needed to use his dermic powers. After a long time, he would not be able to hold out. In addition, the attacks of the mountain and river fist and the 8 desolation sword also consumed dermic powers. Although Jiangshan was known for his abundant dermic powers, he could not withstand 2 supreme treasures and top-notch dermic powers. Furthermore, he had to go all out, especially with such deep foundations and powerful treasures and dermic powers. The consumption was extraordinary. Therefore, in less than an hour, under the impact of the torrent of humanity, Jiangshan was like a small boat bobbing up and down in the raging waves. It seemed like he would capsize if he was not careful. The brilliance of the people's umbrella above his head dimmed, and it was on the verge of collapse. As for Zhang Xian's torrent of humanity, this great art was not that easy to use. In the process of attacking Jiangshan, the people's umbrella, and the Emperor's sword, it began to dim bit by bit. But in the end, it lasted longer than Jiangshan. Although the phantom of the torrent of humanity was fading, it was still vast and boundless. There was no end to it. There were still endless figures in the torrent, playing out all kinds of stories. It seemed like there was no beginning and no end. Chapter 1467. Pooh! After holding on for a while longer, Jiangshan couldn't hold on anymore and spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was extremely gloomy. As the former second ranked of the top 10 inner disciples, although he was suppressed by Pang Bo all year round, he didn't give up because of this. However, he didn't get discouraged because of this. Instead, he turned the pressure into motivation, faced the difficulties, and strived to catch up. Therefore, although he was suppressed by Pang Bo all year round, others didn't think that he was weak. Instead, they felt that he was very inspirational. Because of this, the clan gave him some resources, giving him the opportunity to repair the auspicious umbrella and 4 8 desolation sword. As for why he didn't tell the sect and let them repair it, this was the same as Qin Shiyue's situation. Qin Shiyue's full moon heavenly retribution blade was only a level 3 treasure, while the 2 treasures in his hands were level 4 treasures. Although they were more damaged, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Who knew if he could take them back? Moreover, although his magic power was dense, if it was a level 3 treasure, he wouldn't be able to use it as easily. Putting all this aside, he relied on his great willpower and great opportunities to improve steadily. However, the situation didn't seem to improve because of his improvement. There was no need to talk about Pang Bo. That had almost become a shadow in his life. Even though he had the great Qian dynasty's treasure, he didn't dare say he had a high chance of winning. Therefore, he never challenged Pang Bo. Now that the top 10 inner disciples ranking competition was over, he realized that he had truly underestimated the world. Jiang Shan didn't know that Li Mu Bai, who had always been behind him, was not simple at all until today. If they really used their trump cards, it would be hard to tell who would win. Yin Sha, on the other hand, was on par with him. Evidently, he wasn't easy to deal with either. There was no need to mention Fong Qingshan. He was someone who fought against Pang Bo, and now Jiang Shan had lost to Zheng Xian. One must know that the Motherland Umbrella and the 4 Ocean 8 Desolation Sword in his hands were level 4 supreme treasures, even though they were no longer comparable to before. Although they weren't as good as before, a broken boat still had 3 pounds of nails. Losing to Zheng Xian was truly a disgrace to the spirit treasures. Thinking of this, Jiang Shan couldn't hold in his breath, and his injuries worsened. What a powerful human Tao current. What a powerful righteous aura. Senior brother Zheng Xian is indeed impressive. Even Jiang Shan feels inferior. Although he found it hard to accept, Jiang Shan was someone who had been beaten up by Pang Bo for a long time. He had already developed an immunity to it. After coughing up a mouthful of blood, Jiang Shan finally calmed down. Putting away the 2 supreme treasures, he clasped his hands to Zheng Xian. Thanks for letting me win, junior brother. Zheng Xian didn't act arrogant towards this. He returned the greeting and put away the torrent of human Tao. It was also a fluke that he could defeat Jiang Shan. Don't be fooled by the boundless power of this technique. Its consumption was not low either. If Jiang Shan could hold on a little longer, he would probably be the one who couldn't. If not for the fact that Zheng Xian had been quietly tempering his dermic powers all these years. Even if he and Fong Qingshan had undergone the eternal blessing and tempered their dermic powers by the lightning tribulation, they probably wouldn't have been able to use it at all. Of course, it was the same for Jiang Shan. He could pull out 2 basic tier 4 numinous treasures, and his dermic powers were naturally dense and pure. Moreover, even though the Emerald Core Ruler couldn't compare to the 2 supreme treasures, it was more compatible with Zheng Xian's origin Tao. It was exactly because of this treasure that he was able to connect with the torrents of human Tao so easily and smoothly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to use this technique so easily. However, after Jiang Shan and Zheng Xian's challenge ended, the challenge matches continued. Besides D.E., who had consumed the essence blood of the Beast King and was no longer able to fight, the other 9, including Qin Shuriwei, took turns. For example, Shang Guanjin, who had won the challenge against Emperor Lu, challenged Yin Sha. After losing, she challenged Li Mu Bai. After losing, Emperor Lu challenged Pang Bo, Yin Sha, and Li Mu Bai, who were tied, challenged Jiang Shan and Zheng Xian respectively. In the end, Li Mu Bai gave up on challenging Jiang Shan, while Yin Sha challenged Zheng Xian. Just like that, after more than 10 battles, the results were clear. D.E. was at the bottom. After all, his foundation was still lacking. Most importantly, because he had recklessly consumed the essence blood of the Beast King, he was severely injured and no longer able to fight. Of course, even if he hadn't challenged Pang Bo at the start and hadn't been severely injured, he wouldn't have had much of a chance against others like Shang Guanjin or Emperor Lu if he hadn't consumed the essence blood of the Beast King. He would still be at the bottom. Although the essence blood of the Beast King was not bad, it was at most the same as the talisman that Kong Chong had. It had a one-time effect and could only help him win 1 round at most. In fact, it might even be worse than the talisman. After all, talismans could only hurt others, while the essence blood of the Beast King would hurt the user. As for the challenges in the arena, it wasn't just the result of a single battle, but also the accumulation. Therefore, he was destined to be at the bottom. Above him was Emperor Lu, and Qin Shuriwei was ranked 8th. The reason for this was that although his trump card had been exposed, the full moon, heavenly scourge blade, and the blood scourge were not something that just anyone could deal with. Especially since this mystique and spiritual treasure were very effective against Emperor Li's mystiques and spiritual treasures. Therefore, Emperor Lu stopped at 9th place. In 7th place was Shang Guanjin, in 6th place was Yin Sha, and in 5th place was Li Mubai. Logically speaking, since Yin Sha and Li Mubai were tied, their rankings should be tied. But who asked Li Mubai to accumulate more wins and Yin Sha to have fewer wins? Of course, what was unexpected was that Jiang Shan was ranked 4th, while Zheng Xian had caught up to take 3rd place. Even though they had seen the two fight, they were still in a daze. After all, Jiang Shan had 2 tier 4 spiritual treasures in his possession. He had never taken them out before, and had probably prepared them specifically to deal with Pang Bo. Unfortunately, Zheng Xian had destroyed them before he could use them on Pang Bo. Actually, although this was a little unexpected, if one thought about it carefully, it was reasonable. Although Zheng Xian was also a dark horse, he was different from Yin Sha and the rest. He had been a senior disciple for 2 generations and had a solid foundation. It was just that he had not shown it in the past, but now he was just accumulating it. Accumulating the foundation of 10,000 generations, he would soar into the sky and use the power of the heavens to crush his enemies. It was precisely because of this that he could understand the human Tao torrent and use it. The only unknown now was who would have the last laugh between Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo. Would Fang Qingshan be the dark horse, or would Pang Bo defend his title as the eldest senior brother? Both were unknown, but both were possible. Chapter 1468. Dang, dang, dang. The sound of the bell rang, and everyone's hearts beat along with it. The atmosphere of the already heated scene once again soared to a new height. After dozens of challenges, the only ones who remained undefeated were Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo. Next, it was time for the two of them to fight and decide who would be first and second. Good. We've been waiting for this moment. Yeah, senior brother Pang Bo hasn't fought for many years. I wonder what senior brother Fang Qingshan's skills are like. Whether it's a mule or a horse, pull it out for a walk. We'll know soon enough. Someone clapped and laughed. He was so excited that he was about to jump up and down. Although someone did not speak, the spirit treasure around him involuntarily let out a low hum. It was obvious that it had been looking forward to this moment for a long time. Not to mention the disciples, even the higher-ups on planet, as well as the people from the fluttering Snow Palace and the Freedom Sect, were shocked. They sat up straight, and their eyes lit up. One had to know that Fang Qingshan was the fuse that caused the inner disciple competition to turn out this way. Pang Bo was even more famous. After all, he was the one who had firmly occupied the top position of the inner disciple ever since he entered. If it were not for the fact that they knew that Fang Qingshan had passed the top-notch Thunder Calamity and was the master of the Timeless Arc, as well as the fact that the Dao sect had been improving rapidly recently, the Fluttering Snow Palace, the Freedom Sect, and the Pinnacle Sect would not have come. They had only come because they had heard that the Dao sect had an impressive genius. After waiting for so long, they had finally gone all out. I wonder if senior brother Pang Bo is better, or will junior brother Fang Qingshan surpass him? What else is there to say? It's definitely eldest senior brother Pang Bo. He's someone who has experienced many challenges. His punches and kicks are unparalleled. Even though eldest senior brother Pang Bo is powerful, junior brother Fang Qingshan isn't easy to deal with either. Although he entered the sect late, just based on the might of the heavenly tribulation and the battle with senior brother Jiang Shan and the others, he's not at all inferior to eldest senior brother Pang Bo. That makes sense. I think senior brother Fang Qingshan has a higher chance of winning. You're wrong. Senior brother Pang Bo is more reliable. As Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo stood up from their respective seats, the tens of thousands of spectating disciples went crazy at this moment. They roared out loud, agitated and excited. Such a grand occasion had not been seen for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Normally, After entering the inner sect for a while and reaching the middle stage of Immortal Realm, they would apply for the True Disciple test to prepare for the True Disciple trial. Then, when it was about the middle to late stage, he had already completely entered the Legacy Realm. Those that remained in the inner sect were basically some early-stage, undying disciples. However, it was different this time. In the past, the top 10 disciples of a batch would at most have 1 or 2 late-stage Immortal Realm experts. However, this time, not to mention the top 10, even the top 20 disciples had broken through to the late-stage Immortal Realm. As for peak Immortal Realm experts, there were almost no peak Immortal Realm experts. After all, with such strength, even among the true disciples, they could obtain a good ranking. The most important thing was still Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo. One had just risen and shook the heavens, causing the sect grand competition to change. The other had always been standing on the top of the inner sect pyramid, unshakable. Even among the inner disciples and true disciples in the past, it was extremely rare to find someone who could compare to these two people. Regarding the battle between these two, the crowd had been looking forward to seeing who would win and who would lose. Although it wasn't that no one had challenged them before, even when Zheng Xian and Jiang Shan took action, they didn't reveal any of their trump cards. Although the battle was fierce, people with discerning eyes could see that there was still a certain gap between the two. If the inner sect disciples were the stars in the sky, then Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo were the brightest sun and moon. Their radiance was boundless and couldn't be looked at directly. The others couldn't compete with them at all. The only ones who could defeat them were each other. Although the crowd knew that the gap between them and the two was too big, and they didn't even have the thought of challenging them. However, they still wanted to see how big the gap was between them and the two. That was why they were so concerned about the battle between the two. Not to mention them, even the Divine Emperor Elders were the same. After all, Fang Qingshan and Jiang Shan were about to break through to the Divine Emperor Realm. Even if they hadn't broken through to the Divine Emperor Realm, they still dared not underestimate them. Although they didn't understand what happened in the Crimson Heaven domain previously, the eruption of the Divine Emperor aura was clearly visible. Obviously, even now, their battle strength had touched the threshold of the Divine Emperor Realm. Moreover, with their foundation, not to mention breaking through to the Divine Emperor Realm, even if they reached the level of Jiang, Overlord, and the others, it was already common for them to escape unscathed after fighting with them. Even if they won the battle, it might not be impossible. Buzz. Ignoring the crowd, at this moment, Elder Zhuge Jin didn't come out to make his presence known. Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo had been waiting for this moment for a long time. They only had eyes for each other. Both of them had been accumulating their auras from the beginning, and now they had reached their peak. Whoosh! Their gazes shot out like a bull, and their gazes collided like sharp blades. A clanging sound could be vaguely heard. Boom! Both of them released their auras in an instant. Then, above Fang Qingshan's head, a rainbow-colored brilliance shot up to the sky. The 5 elements and 5 colors reinforced and restrained each other, and the black and white colors of Samsara were in the middle. It covered 30,000 miles in a mighty manner, blocking out the sun. Vaguely, a timeless arc could be seen in the center. It was golden all over, with its sails fluttering and its mast standing tall. The units on the deck were majestic and imposing. Around it, countless living beings were praying, praising, and giving their blessings. In the sails, there were azuras stirring the blood sea, Wu people fighting the heavens and earth, tens of thousands of beasts galloping, jade rabbits and golden crows playing, black lions and jade elephants running, black cranes and peacocks dancing, cheilants and white apes playing chess. And above the timeless arc, there was a chessboard. Wisps of auspicious light hung down from it, enshrouding it in rainbow-colored auspicious light. Golden lotuses bloomed, and countless seal scripts flowed on the petals. Celestial music lingered, describing the wonders of heaven and earth and the eternal Tao. In comparison, Pang Bo was not at a disadvantage at all. However, Pang Bo's aura was somewhat different from Fang Qingshan's. Fang Qingshan's aura was comprehensive. His physical body, dermic powers, primordial spirit, spiritual treasures, laws, and all aspects were in full bloom. On the other hand, Pangbo's aura was completely based on the power of his physical body. However, there was a soft sound around his body, and a layer of golden jade-like brilliance floated out from his body. The acupoints all over his body were like Jotion stars. He was a chaos world, and it was not an ordinary chaos world. His entire body exuded a sacred, majestic, pure, and yang aura. Chapter 1469. The moment the two of them released their auras, everyone felt an unprecedented pressure, making it impossible for them to resist at all. They could not help but want to submit. However, after a moment of absent-mindedness, when they came back to their senses, they found themselves bathed in it. It was like a spring breeze caressing their faces. Those who did not know would think that the previous pressure was a problem with their senses. In fact, the real reason was that Fong Qingshan and Pangbo had restrained their domineering auras and confined it within the arena. This was the same principle as divine objects concealing themselves and returning to their natural state. It was just that ordinary people could release it, but could not restrain it. From this point, the two were a notch higher than the others. Of course, to the bystanders, it was like a spring breeze, intoxicating everyone. However, to Fong Qingshan and Pangbo, the two people who bore the brunt of it, it wasn't so good. It was a different scene. Facing Pangbo's aura, Fong Qingshan only felt an inexplicable aura quietly penetrating his primordial spirit and will, making his mind sluggish. This was Pangbo's fist intent. It enveloped the void in all directions, reflecting people's minds, twisting reality and illusion, past and future, fate and karma. This was the fist momentum formed by the fist intent. It was like a domain, a world, and only he was supreme. His words were the law, making people irresistible. This irresistible feeling not only came from the body, chi and blood, but also the primordial spirit and mind. It was almost an instinct, just like how a mouse would tremble when it heard a cat's cry, no matter how big it was. What a pure fist intent. It interferes with reality, space-time, and karma. It's really amazing. Fong Qingshan praised in his mind. However, he did not know that while he was praising Pangbo, Pangbo was also praising him. Compared to the purity of Pangbo's aura, Fong Qingshan's aura appeared more majestic. It was like a flood of the human Tao, suppressing down with the boundless great Tao, causing others to involuntarily doubt their own insignificance and powerlessness. Similarly, they could not summon the will to resist. Seeing the aura released by the two, even the divine emperor experts were moved. They were even shocked. Good heavens! How could an immortal realm expert release such an aura? Even many god emperors couldn't compare to them. Given their current performance, as long as they continued, it was almost certain that they would break through to the divine emperor realm. What's more, they would not be ordinary divine emperors, but at least yellow or green divine emperors on the divine emperor list. The new generation excels the old, and the new generation replaces the old. Everyone couldn't help but sigh with emotion in their hearts. They had a feeling that time was fleeting and time was fleeting. What about the others? At this moment, there was no noise. Everyone was immersed in the aura of the two people. The aura released by the two of them was not just for show. It looked lively like fireworks. This was a clear display of their Tao. When their auras collided, it was like two people discussing the Tao. It was just that this sparring session was even more tyrannical. It was either the east wind suppressing the west wind or the west wind suppressing the east wind. It was not like an ordinary sparring session, learning from each other's strong points and complementing each other. Through the auras of the two of them, everyone benefited greatly. Although some people's realms were not high enough, and some were looking at the flowers in the fog or the moon in the water, when they were immersed in it, their chi, blood, and divine abilities surged vigorously. It was as if they had consumed a precious treasure of heaven and earth, or it could be said that they had fallen into a state of epiphany. All the obstacles in their past cultivation seemed to show signs of loosening. Dong, dong, dong. Both of their auras collided, but neither of them could do anything to the other. After testing the waters for a while, the brilliance and the aura disappeared. Following that, he strode forward like a meteor, appearing on the arena in an instant, like a drum striking a bell. Please, please. The two cupped their fists, bowed, and made their moves at the same time. Ho! Pang Bo let out a loud roar. It was really earth-shattering. It was like the first voice since the beginning of the world, the first cry in the endless silence. It was extremely overbearing. If heaven and earth didn't speak first, no creature would dare to speak. The sound waves vibrated and ripples spread out with Pang Bo as the center. Bang, 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 bang. In all directions, the void vibrated and cracks formed. The arena shook as if it had lost its momentum. It swayed and seemed like it was going to fall to the ground. This was a level 3 Supreme Treasure arena, but Pang Bo's shout made it into such a situation. The power was obvious. With the exception of the top 10 intersect disciples, the other intersect disciples, and even the ordinary elite disciples, were all shocked. If they were in Meng Hao's shoes, they would immediately feel dizzy and disoriented, like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Great! At the same time, Fong Qingshan, who was the first to bear the brunt, naturally bore 80% of the power of the shout. The aura and gangqi around him were shaken by the heavy voice. Crackle. It actually made a sound of disintegration. Fortunately, he had a precious treasure to suppress it, and he was also successful in refining his body. He could use his divine skill to protect himself. Otherwise, if he was caught off guard and faced a sudden shout, he would probably suffer a great loss, not to mention seriously injuring him and sending him flying like a kite with a broken string. He would probably also lose the upper hand. Once he lost the upper hand, the result could be imagined. After all, in a fight between experts, especially between two people who were not too far apart, victory or defeat was actually in that subtle moment. 1,000-mile dike would be destroyed by an ant's nest. Fortunately, Fong Qingshan was prepared. He knew the principle of a lion using its full strength to catch a rabbit. Most importantly, Pang Bo was not Qin Shuriwei and the others. He did not have the confidence to win, and his chances of winning were only 50-50. If he fell into a disadvantage because of his carelessness and ended up being defeated, Fong Qingshan could die of disgust. It was not that he could not afford to lose or that he felt embarrassed. If it was just a matter of face, it would be simple. He could still laugh it off, and he might not even participate in this competition. Most importantly, this was a matter of resources and rewards, so he had no choice but to be cautious. The difference between first and second was not like the difference between heaven and earth, but there was a huge gap. Only people remembered who was first, but how many people knew who was second? It was the same for the rewards. The rewards for second place were directly cut in half when compared to the rewards for first place. Most importantly, Fong Qingshan had heard from Jiang Overlord that the rewards given to him by the sect depended on his ranking in the grand competition. The better his performance was, the more rewards he would receive, and the better and heavier they would be. Fong Qingshan was a person who would not let go of any resources he saw. How could he allow a large amount of resources to slip away from his hands because of his carelessness? One must know that this was not just the rewards from the intersect competition, but also the resources that the sect would give him. Therefore, for the sake of resources, he had to go all out. Chapter 1470. Buzz. Almost at the same time Pang Bo's shout rang out, in Fong Qingshan's mind, endless auspicious light floated in the air, turning into flower petals. For a moment, the petals fell in profusion and feathers floated in the air, sprinkling down like cranes dancing under the cold moon. Floating in the air, vast and mighty, independent from the world, ascending to immortality. Shortly after, those petals gathered in the middle. Layer by layer, they congregated into a peerless green lotus. It was straight in the middle and straight on the outside. It didn't have any branches, but its fragrance was clear and elegant. Stars twinkled, the sun and the moon circled around it, and billions of scriptures were carved on it. Each of them was like a gem. At first glance, it didn't look like a green lotus, but the great path. The heavenly sounds were unceasing, and a flow of timeless Tao lingered on it. The Great Path Green Lotus Diagram. Fang Qingshan used the Level 3 cardinal treasure, the World Creation Green Lotus, as the foundation. Through observing the 5 12th grade lotus platforms, his previous natal numinous treasure, the 5 elements 5 direction flags, as the foundation, and the eternal green lotus as the overall control, he created a peerless soul refinement technique. It was also a defensive mystical ability. As soon as he used this technique, all evils would be repelled, and no technique could touch him. Thus, although Pang Bo's shout was unexpected and powerful, it didn't trouble him much. Quite the contrary, it reminded him that Pang Bo wasn't simple. He had to be more careful. Moreover, at the same time as Pang Bo's shout, a fist pounded on Fang Qingshan. It looked slow, but it was actually fast. When his punch landed, the sound of air friction was so loud that it sounded like the beating of a heavenly drum. Flames that reached thousands of meters high shot up. With the intensity of this flame, even an early stage of a mortal realm expert would be wounded severely. Hey! Although Fang Qingshan didn't use the sound attack like Pang Bo, his voice was thunderous. He pointed a finger. The reincarnation light on his fingertip condensed into all. After a flash, it hit Pang Bo's fist as if it didn't care about the distance between space and time. Buzz! The reincarnation all vibrated. Although its attacking aura wasn't as strong as Pang Bo's, because the area of impact was smaller, its speed was faster, and the space was more easily torn apart. The movement it made was not small either. Layers of water ripples appeared in the void, and hills collapsed. Rumble! When the two collided, it was truly like the destruction of a primal chaos world. A fist shot out like a dragon, vast and majestic. With a single thought, the fist arrived, domineering beyond compare, shattering everything. If this punch landed, even an ordinary second-grade defensive treasure would be smashed into pieces. One was immeasurable divine ability, using a single point to break through nothing it couldn't break through, exceeding extreme speed. Similarly, ordinary defensive god, Art was completely defenseless in front of him. Both of them knew that the other party was not easy to deal with, and that the outcome would not be decided in 1 or 2 moves. Therefore, both of them did not hesitate to attack. Just as this punch landed, the next punch was already ready to be unleashed. After this divine ability was unleashed, the next divine ability followed closely behind. Fang Qingshan stood on the samsara chess, and he seemed as if he was traversing between reality and illusion. He moved through the gaps in space like a fish in water, and he moved freely. Pang Bo was like a dragon and a tiger, taking large strides forward with an indomitable will. He only cared about smashing down with his fists. His aura was like that of a dragon. For a moment, Fang Qingshan seemed to have fallen into a disadvantageous position, and he was being suppressed by Pang Bo. This kind of battle caused the expressions of Jiang Shan and the others to change slightly. This was just the beginning, and it was already so impressive. If they really fought with all their might, what kind of scene would it be? For a moment, while everyone was immersed in the battle, they could not help but sigh inwardly, feeling ashamed of their inferiority. It's our misfortune to be in the same era as them, but it's also our great fortune. Unfortunately, Lu Xingyu and He Shengliang, together with them, were like the stars and the sun and moon, completely overshadowed by them. Fortunately, it was precisely because of the pressure from them that their improvement was more obvious. Compared to the disciples of previous batches, they had improved a lot. Clang! Clang! Sparks exploded one after another. At this moment, Pang Bo's entire body was connected, and his aura and blood were boiling. His fighting spirit was high, and his entire body was emitting an immeasurable amount of light. At this moment, his entire body was like a red-hot soldering iron, as if he was the only god in the universe. He stepped forward like a drum, and the entire arena was shaking. When he punched out, it was as if heaven and earth were being split open, time and space were exploding, and life was evolving. On the other side, Fang Qingshan was also fighting to his heart's content. All kinds of mystical abilities and combat skills were displayed one after another. The reincarnation ring was able to trap everything. Of course, this mystique was not able to trap everything here. After all, it was able to trap everything. It was more effective against spiritual treasures and mystiques. It was a little lacking against battle skills. Fortunately, the reincarnation ring could not only trap things, but could also be used like a brick, a seal, or a magic treasure to directly smash. Sun Wukong was invincible, and all kinds of punishments that the heavenly court specially used to punish immortals and gods were nothing more than scratches to him. However, he was knocked unconscious by the Vajra bracelet. Although Pang Bo was not comparable to Sun Wukong, the reincarnation ring was not comparable to the Vajra bracelet. The reincarnation cone. Needless to say, Fang Qingshan had used the power of this method from the beginning. It could break through everything, and it was extremely fast. It could break through a single point, and its single target attack was very powerful. The 5 elements reincarnation diagram. When he was dealing with Qin Shuriwei, Fang Qingshan had already used it. Not only could it trap people, but it could also isolate space-time, create terrain, and suppress one's strength. The spinning of the 2 wheels was like a world-destroying grindstone. However, it did not seem to have much effect on Pang Bo, because he did not borrow the power of heaven and earth. The all-heaven reincarnation chessboard. This time, Fang Qingshan was no longer using the defensive and evasive abilities of this mystique. Instead, he was using its offensive abilities. This mystical ability had been comprehended by Fang Qingshan using the all-heaven chessboard as a foundation, and the inspiration he had obtained from the Linglong Grand overarching heaven. The all-heaven chessboard could not only travel through space-time, but also had peerless offensive power. Each chess piece was a world, and when a world suppressed it, even the weakest minor chiliocosm would have considerable power when it exploded. Not to mention the suppression of worlds like the Merchant Chaos World and the Tao Chaos World. If they were at their peak, even God Kings and God Emperors would have to retreat, let alone undying beings. In addition to all kinds of intrinsic mystical abilities and primordial spirit mystical abilities, he also used all kinds of intrinsic combat skills and physical mystical abilities. Fang Qingshan's all-heaven Tao verification art was a comprehensive cultivation encyclopedia. There was no need to say much about the cultivation arts. Just the cultivation method alone was not limited to qi cultivation, but also body tempering and spirit tempering. The most outstanding one in terms of spirit tempering was naturally the Great Tao Green Lotus visualization art. In terms of body tempering, it was the same as qi cultivation. Every major barrier, such as Immortal Ascension, Golden Immortal, Grand Heavenly Immortal, Origin Immortal, and Immortal, could be refined through the use of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Using the all-heaven Tao verification art's unique method, he could condense the Tao aura of heaven and earth into a natal technique, like a divine ability bestowed by the heavens. As for the spiritual treasures, he did not take out the timeless ark or the all-heaven chessboard, but he took out the reincarnation mirror without hesitation. Chapter 1471. Black and white alternated, life and death blended, and time and space intertwined. A mirror floated above Fang Qingshan's head, coordinating everything. However, above Pang Bo's head was a solid fist great path, which was fighting against it. Roar! A dragon roar shook the sky. Pang Bo's fists were like the grand sun, the only light source in the world, blazing and sacred. As the fists fell, it was no longer 10 suns in the sky, but all the stars had turned into grand suns. A grand sun illuminated the universe. 10 grand suns burned down the desolation. Countless grand suns gathered together, The power was simply incredible. The entire time and space of the arena were in chaos, as if they had gone back to the past or traveled to the future. However, neither the past nor the future could leave the slightest mark on Pang Bo's body. What a strong body! Seeing this, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but exclaim. What Pang Bo cultivated was a fist scripture, which was similar to the Myriad Realms method, which led directly to the venerable emperor. This cultivation technique was created by a rogue cultivator like the Sword Emperor of the Storm, and it was an unparalleled classic. It specialized in fists and proved the way with fists. All kinds of fists and combat skills were no weaker than Jiangshan's fist of mountains and rivers. They were even purer. After all, the fist of mountains and rivers was an emperor technique in another aspect. Not only did it have fists, but it also had the origin cultivation method, the indestructible emperor fist body. After cultivating this cultivation method, one's body would be even stronger than the spirit treasures of the same level. This cultivation method didn't consume magic power, only physical strength. As long as the physical strength was not exhausted, the power of the fist would not be reduced. What about Fang Qingshan? Although in terms of divine powers, battle skills, and spirit treasures, he seemed to be inferior to Pang Bo. The main reason was that Pang Bo specialized in one, and although Fang Qingshan also specialized in one, there was a difference. Pang Bo's one was a fist. Whether it was the Dharma laws, Tao, divine powers, battle skills, or anything else, they were all fists. The Dharma laws were fists, the Tao, was fists, the divine powers were fists, and the battle skills were fists. If one looked at it from the side, it was still a fist. If one looked at it from the side, it was still a fist. Fang Qingshan, on the other hand, was different. Fang Qingshan's one was reincarnation. However, this one didn't mean that there was only reincarnation. Rather, it meant that the one unified all, transforming all into one, reducing what was insufficient to provide for what was surplus, using the myriad great Taos to support reincarnation. A person's energy was limited. Even if the primordial spirit was powerful and could be divided into thousands of parts, it still could not be all round. After all, the split primordial spirit was naturally far inferior to the original body. Even if there was an existence like Sanqing, which was the same as the original body, the effect could only be increased by 3 times at most. However, cultivating to the undying level was extremely difficult, let alone a split primordial spirit. Even a primordial spirit at its peak would not be easy to comprehend. Therefore, compared to Pang Bo's fists, Fang Qingshan was refining spirit treasures and cultivating supernatural powers and combat skills. Naturally, he was somewhat lacking. However, although these divine abilities, numinous treasures, and battle techniques seemed to be slightly inferior, they could cooperate and take turns to attack, and they were not at a disadvantage. Clang, clang, clang. For a moment, there were no longer sparks bursting out from their bodies. Instead, they exploded into balls of suns, illuminating the entire arena with a ghastly white light. Those with lower cultivation would subconsciously close their eyes with a single glance and shed tears. If they forced themselves to look at it, their eyes and even their primordial spirit would be injured. Awesome! Pang Bo, who had always been calm and even a little aloof, now looked comfortable and spoke generously. In fact, it was not that Pang Bo was aloof and didn't care about it. After all, he was a man who cultivated his body and fist. Moreover, he walked on the path of majestic momentum. How could it be like this? However, it was lonely at the top. In the inner sect, he was the king. The others could not cause him much trouble at all. Not to mention the inner sect, even among the true disciples, it was hard for him to find an opponent. Moreover, when people like them reached the late or peak of the immortal realm, they would be busy searching for secrets and ways to break through to the God Emperor realm. How could they stay in the sect leisurely and wait for him to challenge them? Since they couldn't find an opponent, the others kept a respectful distance from him. Therefore, it created Pang Bo's appearance of being aloof from the world. But now, After exchanging blows with Fang Qingshan, he had completely torn apart his facade. It was hard to find an opponent. Fang Qingshan was strong and not weaker than him in all aspects. In terms of cultivation, although Pang Bo was at the peak of the immortal realm, Fang Qingshan was not far behind. In terms of Dharma power, both of them were thick and pure, as if they had inexhaustible power. The other's Dharma power was liquid, while theirs was solid. In terms of primordial spirit, Pang Bo constantly used his fist intent to refine himself. The great path was not in heaven and earth, but in himself. He wanted to completely transform his primordial spirit into the fist path. As for Fang Qingshan, he was also constantly studying the great path green lotus diagram, subtly refining himself with the eternal Tao connotation. Therefore, although their methods were different, the great path led to the same goal. The two of them were truly evenly matched, a talented general meeting a talented general. At this moment, they didn't care about winning or losing anymore. To respect a rare opponent, they had to go all out. Without any distracting thoughts, the battle became more intense. The two of them fought without any skills or thoughts. They were almost relying on their instincts. Even their thoughts couldn't keep up with their movements. They only attacked based on their instincts. Pang Bo punched out one after another. Sometimes it was in the east, sometimes it was in the west, sometimes it was in the front, sometimes it was behind, sometimes it was in a curve, and sometimes it was halfway through. It was elusive. When the punch landed, it was like a black hole. The explosive sound was so loud that people couldn't hear it. The aura between heaven and earth could make people suffocate instantly. Fang Qingshan's face was solemn. He calmly responded. Whether attacking or defending, he responded to the changes with the same method. He used the reincarnation circle to smash, the reincarnation all to stab, the 5 elements reincarnation diagram to trap and kill, or the all-heaven reincarnation chess to avoid the sharp edge. Pang Bo didn't care about any secret techniques, changes in combat skills, or spiritual treasures or weapons. He only had one punch, a punch that could penetrate the sky and earth. It was just like when Pangu faced the 3,000 fiend celestials in the past. One punch could break all techniques, and one punch could defeat all techniques. And Fang Qingshan didn't care how sharp Pang Bo's fist was, how fast it was, how pure the fist intent was, and how majestic the fist momentum was. Combat skills, divine sense, and spiritual treasures took turns to attack, or lead, or dissipate, or hit, or defend, or attack. He moved around while withdrawing and attacking. On one side, all kinds of divine sense and combat skills were thrown out as if they were free, while on the other side he punched back and forth. Although each punch seemed to be the same, if one observed carefully, they seemed to be completely different. The two of them were already in a killing frenzy. They fought with all their might, and the aftermath spread out in all directions. Circles of ripples appeared in the void, as if a tide had passed by. Wherever the ripples passed by, everything turned into powder. This was the extreme explosion of power. If this wasn't a third-level supreme treasure arena where divine emperors fought, and it wasn't even an early-stage third-level one, the arena would have been destroyed. Chapter 1472. Pang Bo and Fang Qingshan are great. With these two, the Dao sect won't have to worry for the next 100,000 years. Yeah, and this doesn't even include the current eldest elite disciple, Jiang Overlord, and the others. With these people around, even if the Dao sect can't advance a step further, it can at least guarantee that it won't decline within 3 generations. I don't know whether the Dao sect will decline or improve. I only care about which of them is better. It's really hard to judge. Based on the current situation, it's only a 50-50 split. Indeed, Pang Bo is more refined and pure, while Fang Qingshan is more comprehensive and profound. As for the real decisive battle, it still depends on their trump cards. Not bad, not bad. Fang Qingshan has the timeless arc, but I don't know what Pang Bo's trump card is. I think Pang Bo is better. After all, Fang Qingshan's timeless arc has been exposed. Moreover, his timeless arc is only at the supreme level. Even if it's mutated, how strong can it be? No. Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo were locked in a fierce battle. The scene of the two fighting was so big that it was like two armies fighting. If it wasn't for the restriction of the arena, the surrounding disciples would have been caught in the crossfire. Among the onlookers, except for a small number of people who could continue to observe and comment on the situation, they could only watch the show. After all, when the two fought, time and space were in chaos, and the Tao was everywhere. Their realm was not high enough, and when they forced themselves to watch, many people shed tears of blood, and even their primordial spirits were seriously injured. Since they could not watch in detail, they could only discuss it to vent the excitement in their hearts. Although Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo could not represent the level of all the Tao Will Sect's disciples, they could see the whole picture. With their Tao Will Sect, at least for this generation, or even the next generation, they would not have to worry about it. It was even possible for the sect to rise. Fang Qingshan had the timeless Arkansas. As long as he was there, as long as the Tao Will Sect was really in a critical situation, it would not be a problem for them to break through to the Emperor level regardless of the cost. After all, the timeless arc was really a shortcut in the heavens and realms. For others, even if they were talented and spent countless resources, they might not be sure how far they could go. But the timeless arc was different. As long as you had enough resources, it could push you to the Emperor level. As an old force, the Tao Will Sect did not lack resources, although it had declined. Moreover, even if there were not enough resources and they could not reach the Emperor level, as long as they reached the peak of the God Emperor level, they might be able to fight with the Emperor level. It should be known that Fang Qingshan's timeless arc was a mutated level. It could suppress the immortal realm when it had just broken through to the supreme level. When it broke through to the peak of the God Emperor level, it might be able to fight with the Emperor level. Although the gap between the Emperor level and the Emperor level was greater than the gap between the new God Emperor and the peak of the God Emperor level. What about Pang Bo? He had not shown his trump card yet, but from the fifth scripture he performed, it was obvious that he was not simple. It should be known that the Fist Emperor had relied on this divine technique to push the Great Way of Fist to the peak, suppressing countless experts and Great Way principles. Just like Pangu, he used the Force principle to suppress space-time, fate, and cause and effect. Apart from these two, there was still Zheng Xian who controlled the torrent of humanity, Jiang Shan who obtained the Great Qian Dynasty's relic, Di Yi who obtained the All-Beast Great Emperor's relic, and so on. The Tao Will Sect's luck seemed to be on the verge of a rebound, or rather, a resurgence. The disciples of this batch were all talented, and each of them had their own opportunities. They were either level 3 supreme treasures or various top-notch divine skills and inheritances. Once these people grew up, just half of them would be able to support half of the Tao Will Sect, not to mention all of them. On the battlefield, Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo had been fighting for a period of time. They were exchanging blows, and their attacks were brutal. Ordinary early-stage Immortal Realm experts could be injured or killed instantly. But similarly, even if they did not use any techniques, their attacks were almost instinctive. They seemed to be extraordinarily skillful, unconventional, and traceless, making it impossible for others to defend against them. If others continued to attack like this, their magic power would probably be insufficient, and their primordial spirit would be exhausted. However, for the two of them, even if it was not a warm-up match, it was probably not that bad. The speed of magic power consumption was not as fast as the speed of recovery, but it seemed that it would not be a problem for them to fight for another 3 days and 3 nights to reach that feeling of exhaustion. As for their primordial spirits, they were relying on their instincts to operate, so there was no need for them to use their primordial spirits. They seemed to be awake, but not awake, and seemed to be asleep, but not asleep. It seems that continuing to fight like this is not a solution. Even if we fight for another half a day and attack each other for 1,000 times, we will still be evenly matched. Pang Bo thought to himself, in this case, I can only use my trump card to determine who is stronger. Coincidentally, or perhaps great minds think alike, Fong Qingshan was thinking the same thing at the moment. Looks like if we want to determine the victor, we'll have to see whose trump card is superior in the end. As the two of them thought so, there was a trace in their eyes. They looked at each other and saw clues from each other's pupils. Almost without any hesitation, the two of them took out their respective trump cards. Phew! Fong Qingshan let out a deep breath and then folded his hands into a seal. At the same time, the timeless arc and the all-heavens chessboard in his sea of consciousness that had not been used for a long time began to write at the same time. A low voice rang out in Fong Qingshan's heart. I am the only one in the heavens, man and treasure as one. Swish! The moment his voice rang out, the all-heavens chessboard turned into a stream of light and shot out, falling into the eternal lightning pool of the timeless Arkansas. Then, the timeless arc melted like mercury, spreading from the top of Fong Qingshan's head, wrapping around Fong Qingshan, and then directly fused into Fong Qingshan's body. They blended together like water and milk, as if they were one. When the all-heavens chessboard and the timeless arc fused into Fong Qingshan's body, Fong Qingshan's eyes, which were as deep as the end of the world, suddenly burst out with a dazzling light. Even the sun and moon paled in comparison. His body also underwent a huge change at this moment. Like an inflated balloon, it began to expand involuntarily. Although it had become bigger, it was not bloated. If his original body was as dazzling as a gem, comparable to a medium grade 2 treasure, then it gradually became like a diamond. It was even purer and more condensed, reaching the level of a high grade 2 treasure or even the peak of half a step. Mighty magic power flowed in his body like countless angry dragons roaring. Even the audience outside the arena could hear it clearly. It was deafening, and those who did not know might even think it was the roar of the spatial tide. Chapter 1473. The expansion of his body was like a normal body using the law phenomenon. At the same time, it naturally increased his strength. At this moment, Fong Qingshan felt that he had endless strength. It seemed that the world would collapse if he moved a little. He stamped his feet as if the arena was going to collapse. The surging of his qi naturally brought about a continuous rise in his cultivation base and a crazy increase in his cultivation base. Peak late stage immortal realm, peak immortal realm, half-step emperor realm, early stage god emperor. Good heavens! Almost in a split second, Fong Qingshan's cultivation base was like a crazy car that couldn't stop its brakes. He had actually crossed the barrier between the immortal realm and the immortal realm. What's more, he was not just a beginner immortal emperor, but an early-stage immortal emperor. It should be known that many elders of Tao sect spent more than 1,000,000 years to reach early-stage god emperor from early-stage god emperor. However, it only took a moment. Although it was just a glimpse and not his real cultivation, it was enough to make people gasp. The reason for this was that Fong Qingshan's cultivation and foundation had reached the point where success came naturally. It was just like when he passed the immortal tribulation and almost reached the peak late stage immortal realm. In addition, he had the effect of the timeless arc and the celestial chessboard. Another reason was that when Fong Qingshan fought with a god emperor in Crimson Heaven Realm, he had a clearer understanding of the power of a god emperor. As he fought with Qin Shuriwei, Li Mubai, Jiang Shan, Peng Bo, and the others, he constantly digested it and finally saw this scene. As Fong Qingshan's cultivation continued to rise, the surrounding space began to shake and even set off crazy waves. Seeing this scene, everyone was really moved. Everyone valued Fong Qingshan very much. Geniuses always made people think highly of them. As the saying went, it was better to bully a white-haired old man than to bully a poor young man, who knew whether the river would flow east for 30 years or west for 30 years. As long as it was not related to personal interests, everyone always had a sense of tolerance and appreciation. In the beginning, Fong Qingshan's fame spread far and wide because of that undying tribulation, a peak undying tribulation, and a peak undying tribulation at that. Even the geniuses of the top 50 supreme forces were no better than him. Of course, there was also the eternal heavenly boat, the master of the eternal heavenly boat. The master of the eternal heavenly boat was a very special existence in the infinite worlds of the universe. As long as one became the master of the timeless arc and did not die along the way, even if one did not become an venerable emperor expert, it would be too easy for one to become a peak god emperor expert. It was precisely because of these 2 points, coupled with the fact that the strength of the Tao sect had grown a little quickly in recent years, it had aroused the vigilance of others. As a result, the inner court competition could not be stopped, attracting the Drifting Snow Palace, the Freedom School, the Martial Pole sect, and many rogue cultivators. However, the God Emperor experts were not too surprised. If Fang Qingshan had not been born in the Tao sect, even if he heard it, he would probably just laugh it off. After all, geniuses were highly regarded. But on the other hand, it only represented their potential. It meant that they were still a junior, and their strength was not enough. After all, no matter how great one's potential was, it was still just potential. Before one's potential was completely transformed into strength, everything was like a castle in the air. In every era, every session, every year, every day, were there not many geniuses who died because they were intercepted, fell into danger, suffered chi deviation, or for various reasons. However, as the inter-disciple competition continued, everyone gradually changed this view. Although he was a genius, part of his strength had already been developed, so he could not be ignored. First, in the Crimson Heaven realm, although they could not see the real scene, they could see the eruption of God Emperor aura, one after another. Moreover, although they did not know, how could those who participated in the same trial not know? Once the trial ended, everyone knew what happened inside. Because of this, they had a clear understanding of Fang Qingshan's strength. Moreover, as the matches progressed, their understanding of each other deepened. However, they still underestimated Fang Qingshan's ability. Although they knew that he had the timeless arc, and although they knew that his trump card might be extraordinary, but no one expected him to be so amazing that he could directly raise his cultivation to the early God Emperor realm. It should be known that the strength of some elders in the Tao sect had not reached this level yet. Not only Fang Qingshan, but Pang Bo also did not disappoint the crowd. There is nothing else besides the sacrificial fist. Pang Bo's voice was very calm, but it was full of confidence, faith, and purity. The next moment, there was a loud bang. In an instant, the void where Pang Bo was completely collapsed, and a black hole formed. It was as if Mount Buzhou had collapsed, and a hole had appeared in the sky. Endless, chaotic chi flowed down like the Milky Way. No one knew where it came from, and no one knew where it was going. It was a familiar scene. Not long ago, everyone had experienced this scene. It was when Zheng Xian and Jiang Shan were fighting. However, at that time, Zheng Xian had summoned the torrent of human Tao. At this moment, Pang Bo was guiding the river of time and space. The river of time and space. Seeing this river, everyone's pupils shrank slightly. For any living creature in this boundless void, the river of time and space was a taboo existence. Time was supreme, and space was king. This was a universal truth, not to mention the integration of time and space. Even a real supreme Emperor Venerable, who could control time and space and reverse the past and future, would not dare to truly overturn rivers and seas. Even if they entered, they would be extremely cautious. This was because the river of time and space was said to have originated from the primordial world. The place of origin was even more dangerous than the most ancient and dangerous level 4 places. It was even more dangerous than heavenly disasters, and even Emperor Venerables could be buried there. Even Emperor Venerables, who had proven their Tao through time and space, did not dare to take chances. On the contrary, it was precisely because they understood it that they were even more afraid. Of course, the usual talk of breaking time and space and reversing time and space, not to mention Emperor Venerables, was not a lie. However, the so-called space-time freeze, shatter, regress, acceleration, and some were actually just local space-time. At most, it was the desolation of one side, a phantom or a tributary of the river of time and space in the chaotic world. Fang Qingshan was very clear about this. After all, he had seen it and summoned it before. However, it was a phantom or a tributary after all, in the river of time and space, which represented the entire universe. Even a tiny wave was enough to suppress a divine emperor. Chapter 1474. In fact, the human Tao torrent summoned by Zheng Xian was only a part of the river of time and space, a branch. Everyone had seen the power of the human Tao torrent. Jiang Shan had 2 level 4 supreme treasures, but they had been destroyed. It was easy to imagine how powerful the river of time and space was. In other words, even an emperor god could only tremble with fear when entering the river of time and space, as if walking on thin ice. It would be fine if it was just a small trick, but if they wanted to stir up trouble, they would be in serious trouble if they were not careful. The stronger one was, the more they could understand the power of the river of time and space. They were more cautious. Because it was rumored that the river of time and space originated from the primordial world. If one went against the flow, they could leave the myriad heavens and enter the primordial world. No one knew how many years and eras had passed since the myriad heavens and space had been formed. However, the highest they could cultivate was the peak emperor god, and they could not advance any further. To break through, all the emperor gods tried all kinds of methods. They went to all kinds of dangerous places, looked for opportunities, and achieved great merits. They destroyed the world to prove their Tao and merged with the Tao. Of course, this included entering the primordial world through the river of time and space. This was especially true for venerable emperors who cultivated the space-time Tao. Having the river of time and space was like a shortcut. However, the idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. At first, they wanted to directly control the river of time and space like merging with the Tao. Later, they realized that this method was a bit difficult, so they settled for the next best thing. They wanted to follow the river of time and space to trace the origin and enter the origin. However, all those who entered the river of time and space never returned. No one had seen them again. However, everyone knew that it was not because their plan had succeeded and they had gone to the primordial world, but because they had all died. It was not a big deal for the itinerant cultivators, but the emperor gods with powerful forces had left their life lamps. Not long after they entered, the life lamps were extinguished, which meant that they had died. In the beginning, some people didn't believe it, thinking that they might succeed if they were lucky enough. And for those ancient venerable sovereigns who hadn't made any progress since the beginning of the formation of the universe, they wouldn't give up as long as there was a glimmer of hope. However, after hundreds of venerable emperors had gone and never returned, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on them. They completely woke up and gave up on this seemingly hopeful path. Putting aside the rarity and danger of the river of space-time, what Pangbo had summoned was clearly not the real river of space-time. It was impossible to summon the real river of space-time unless one was an imperial venerable. In fact, even if one encountered the real river of space-time, one would probably be the first to suffer. This was clearly a phantom image of the river of space-time. Even so, it was enough, just like how of the human Tao torrent had been before. However, Tao torrent of Tao of the river of human cultivation was a torrent of the world Tao, of cultivation emperor Tao, of the human Tao, of Xian Tao, of human spirit Tao of. His body was tall and mighty, and his muscles were coiled up. At a glance, one could tell that he was in existence similar to Pangu, a body cultivator. The body of Tao towards body, not, and the body of Chun of you of the body. But no one cared about this, because the moment they saw this body, they had completely forgotten his face. The first thing they felt when they saw this person was the Tao, the endless great Tao. There seemed to be countless mysterious Tao runes, Tao rhymes, and countless mysterious divine chains of law flashing and flickering. The whole body gave off a strong, desolate, simple, and heavy, ancient aura. The moment it appeared, everyone present, including the Elder of Technique imparting and those at the peak of the Divine Emperor realm, felt as if an invisible shackle had been imposed on them, putting them under great pressure. Venerable Emperor. When Zhuge and the others saw this image, their bodies instantly trembled. They felt a sense of solemnity and muttered two words to themselves. Yes, Venerable Emperor. Only such an existence could make them feel so oppressed with just a shadow, making them feel a little suffocated. In fact, they were still fine. The others, including the Immortal Realm and the Mixed Essence Realm disciples, tried to peek at the shadow, but they were all seriously injured by the domineering aura and fighting will spitting out blood. This was an unconscious shadow. If it faced a real person, what would the situation be like? If they dared to peek at the real person, they would probably die on the spot in the blink of an eye. In this regard, Fang Qingshan only wanted to say that if it was the real Venerable Emperor, you would not have any thoughts and your mind would stop working. Because when he saw the Sword Emperor of the Storm, he had the same feeling. Even if the Venerable Emperor had restrained his aura, as long as you thought that it was an Venerable Emperor standing in front of you, you would tremble with fear, just like in a feudal dynasty, when ordinary people saw the Emperor. Could it be the Fist Emperor? It's very possible. After all, Pang Bo got his inheritance. Yes, such a pure fist intent, and he is an Venerable Emperor. I can't think of anyone else besides the Fist Emperor. After everyone said the word Venerable Emperor, the speculation about the shadow rose again. In fact, it was easy to guess. Judging from a means that Pang Bo had performed previously, everyone knew that he had gotten the legacy of the ancient Great Emperor, the Fist Emperor. In addition to the feeling that this phantom gave everyone, one should know that every martial emperor was unique. Therefore, it was not difficult to guess his identity. Indeed, as everyone had guessed, the shadow was a space-time imprint left by the Fist Emperor. No one knew how Pang Bo had summoned it. It gave off endless domineering aura and fighting will. It seemed that no matter what was in front of it, it could be smashed with a punch. Endless fighting will, arrogance, and confidence could be felt from it. That kind of power made it impossible for anyone to resist. After the Fist Emperor's shadow was summoned by Pang Bo, it was already shocking enough. However, the most shocking thing was yet to come. The next moment, the shadow blinked as if it had come alive. It was like a clone, which scared Zhuge and the others so much that they stood up and were on guard. Some were ready to retreat as soon as something went wrong, while some were ready to make the first move. After all, it was not the real body of an Venerable Emperor, and the Daoul sect was even preparing a level 4 supreme treasure. However, fortunately, the shadow completely ignored them. After taking a step out of the river of space-time, it instantly appeared in front of Pang Bo. Without giving the Pang family and the Daoul sect any time to worry, it instantly integrated into his body, as if it was originally just a shadow of him. Chapter 1475. As the Fist Monarch Phantasm entered Pang Bo's body underwent a tremendous change almost in an instant. Roar. Pang Bo couldn't help but let out a deafening roar. The dragon roar in the 9th heaven shocked everyone. This roar was even more impassioned and shocking than the previous one. Then, like Fang Qingshan, his body began to grow at an amazing speed. In a twinkling, he had grown to the same height as Fang Qingshan. If the arena was not a supreme treasure that formed its own world, it would not be able to contain them. His whole body gave off an amazing aura. It seemed that endless power was rolling in his body and shuttling through his flesh and blood. His chi and blood soared to the sky, almost dyeing the whole world red. The temperature of the arena rose again and again. The heat of his chi and blood was no less than that of the sea of fire card that Shangguan Jin had displayed previously. Peak of Immortal Realm, Early Divine Emperor, Early Divine Emperor. Just like Fang Qingshan, at this moment, Pang Bo's cultivation base had also reached the early stage of Deity Emperor. Everyone was completely numb to this. What else could they say? First, they saw the inner disciples who were not weak. Then they saw all kinds of unique skills emerging like carps in a river. Then they saw all kinds of supreme treasures. Now, even his cultivation had reached the divine emperor level. It should be known that many small forces' peak level was no higher than this. They could only sigh that people had different fates. People died when compared, and goods were thrown away when compared. Not to mention how envious and jealous the others were at this moment. Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo did not know it all. Even if they knew, they would not take it to heart. Not to mention that they were not the kind of people who could be easily disturbed by the outside world. They could not afford to be distracted at this stage of the battle. At this moment, one of them became one with the treasure, and the other summoned the river of time and space, drawing a shadow of the venerable emperor into his body. The power in his body rose rapidly. With a casual movement, he could clearly feel the terrifying power contained in his body that could destroy the world. Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo knew that it would be a piece of cake for them to kill their former selves with their current strength. However, good fortune is accompanied by misfortune, and misfortune is accompanied by blessings. In this world, there is no such thing as enjoying the benefits without paying the price and bearing the corresponding drawbacks. At the end of the day, this was not the power that the main body had painstakingly cultivated. Even though there were no signs of rejection, it was still exceptionally domineering, violent, and uncontrollable. Not to mention being able to control it as easily as before, it was difficult for the surging magic power not to hurt him. The strength of their bodies and essence souls were both high. This power was still within the range of what they could endure. Just like before, when Di had swallowed the Beast King's blood essence, he had truly hurt himself and others. In fact, if Zhuge Jin had not intervened in the end, he would have played himself to death. As for Fang Qingshan and Li Wuyo, although they could still control it, it could be seen that the meridians on the surface of their gigantic bodies were crazily shuttling like horned dragons. Their veins were bulging, and their blood vessels were like dragons. It was as if their bodies would completely explode in the next moment. His skin was cracking. "Let's settle this in one move," Pang Bo said to Fang Qingshan. "All right." Fang Qingshan nodded without hesitation. Even though they were intoxicated by the sudden increase in power, Fang Qingshan and Li Wuyo did not indulge in it. Firstly, they clearly knew that this was not real power. After a short while, they would be beaten back to their original state. Secondly, the power was too great and their bodies could not bear it. Every moment was a form of torture for them. The most important thing was their willpower. Their realms were destined to wake up from the powerful power very quickly. Since everyone could not hold on for too long, they naturally needed to cut the Gordian knot and end the battle quickly. "Kill!" Pang Bo did not say anything and directly threw a punch. This punch did not seem fast. Even ordinary primordial chaos realm disciples could see the trajectory clearly. However, this seemingly ordinary punch made everyone, including many divine emperors and even peak divine emperors, look solemn. Ordinary divine emperors were, of course, shocked by the power of this punch. Others might not be able to see it, but how could these divine emperors not be able to see it clearly with their eyesight? When this punch landed, even they had to go all out. If they were careless, they might fail miserably. As for the group of peak divine emperors, they did not care about the power of this punch. Although the difference between an early-stage divine emperor and a peak divine emperor was only a few small realms, it was still like a natural chasm. What they cared about was the charm of a fist emperor revealed in Pang Bo's punch. Yes, although he was only an early-stage divine emperor, since he had borrowed the venerable emperor's imprint, he naturally carried some charm. The charm of an venerable emperor was naturally not to be missed by peak divine emperors like them. Facing Pang Bo's punch, Fang Qingshan did not dodge. Instead, he threw out a punch of his own. However, Pang Bo's punch was like a boulder and a hammer, while Fang Qingshan's punch was like a sword and a spear. The reason was that he had added the chaotic demonic horn to the tip of his fist. Rather than saying it was a punch, it would be better to say that the timeless arc hit with all its might. When the two fists collided, there was no earth-shattering sound. Instead, it seemed to be frozen at this moment. In the next moment, the place where the two fists collided was like a black hole, wantonly swallowing the two fists and the two forces. Then, the black hole began to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye, spreading across the entire arena. Great sounds were silent, and great elephants were silent. Crack, crack. Cracking sounds were heard. At this moment, it was not the void that was shattering, but the arena that could not bear the heavy load. At the same time, Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo's bodies were like cracked porcelain, as if they could explode at any time. This was because the two of them had exerted their full strength, and their bodies could not bear the explosion of power. In addition, the collision could be said to have hurt both themselves and the opponent. Moreover, there was the aftermath of the collision. Under the impact, they had reached the point of exhaustion. Fortunately, this was an arena battle, and this was the Dao sect. Zhuge Jin and the others were here. Freeze! Seeing that Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo were about to fall from the impact of their fight, Zhuge Jin made a move. Just like when he had rescued De, he first froze time and space. With a soft sound, it was as if a pair of hands had calmed all the ripples. If not for the fact that Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo were exhausted, those who did not know why would have thought that nothing had happened. Then, he patted Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo's bodies. This was not to attack them, but to suppress their injuries and restore their strength. Chapter 1476. Fang Qingshan and Pang Bo were both exceptional. One of them had achieved the human treasure unification, and the other had summoned the sovereign's imprint on his body, allowing his cultivation to soar to the early divine emperor realm. His battle prowess had also skyrocketed. No one would doubt that he was a mid-divine emperor, let alone an early divine emperor. However, whether it was an early divine emperor or a mid-divine emperor, they were still far behind peak divine Emperor Zhuge Jin, especially their early divine emperor battle prowess. A mid-divine emperor battle prowess was just average, while Zhuge Jin's peak divine emperor battle prowess might not be at the top of the pyramid, but it was above the advanced stage, not far from the peak stage. With his help, the commotion caused by the two was instantly suppressed. With a slap on the two, the timeless arc in Fang Qingshan's body came out, and the sovereign's imprint on Pang Bo's body also dissipated. No one knew whether it was gone or returned to the space-time. At the same time, an extremely pure wave of magic power that did not have the slightest bit of rejection, as if it was their own magic power that they had painstakingly cultivated, poured into their bodies. Not only did it replenish their depleted magic power, it also helped to sort out the rampaging power in their bodies and suppress their injuries. Phew. With Zhuge Jin's help, Fang Qingshan and the man finally had a chance to catch their breath after a close shave with death. After letting out a long breath of turbid air, Pang Bo calmed down for a moment and spoke first. "It's my loss." He admitted defeat as soon as he opened his mouth. He knew that if not for the fact that the elder of imparting techniques had stepped in and allowed the shockwaves to strike him, he might not have been able to defend against it even if his physical body was at its peak. But at this moment, he might not have been able to. Most importantly, his body was his great Tao. Even if his body was not destroyed, if it was severely injured, it would be a disaster for him. But Fang Qingshan was different. He had the great void immortal armor, the red lotus of fire, the bell of chaos, and all kinds of defensive treasures. Moreover, his body was not weak either. Even if he was severely injured, with the help of the spiritual treasures, his injuries would be lighter than Fang Qingshan's. Moreover, Pang Bo was the eldest senior brother of the inner sect who had joined the sect for many years, while Fang Qingshan had just joined the sect and was younger than him. Pang Bo lost if he could not defeat his opponent. Therefore, in the end, he was still slightly weaker. "You're wrong. In this regard, Fang Qingshan had a different opinion. I've lost this time." Although Fang Qingshan wanted to be number one because that would allow him to obtain more resources, As the saying goes, even thieves have their own principles. A gentleman loves money, and he has his own pride. He was not willing to let Pang Bo give in to him. Pang Bo was well aware of his own abilities. He thought that he had all sorts of defensive spiritual treasures that could protect him from the calamity. Little did he know, in that previous attack, he had already used up all of his magic power. Not only him, but the eternal lightning pool had also dried up. Without magic power, how could he activate it? It was completely useless to rely on its own material. Even if it was possible, Pang Bo's physical body might not be able to do so. As for Pang Bo's physical body, the timeless arc was just as important to Fong Qingshan. The reason why the Tao Yi sect valued Fong Qingshan wasn't just because of his talent, but because he was the owner of the timeless Arkansas. If too much damage was done to him, it wouldn't be worth it. Though Fong Qingshan didn't think that he had lost, he didn't win either. However, since Pang Bo admitted defeat without hesitation, Fong Qingshan wasn't willing to fall behind. Okay, this time you guys are tied. Let's share first place. Seeing how Fong Qingshan were still trying to push things to the side, Zhuge Jin and the others didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Everyone else was fighting for first place, but they were acting like first place was a hot potato. They didn't want it, so they didn't want it. However, Zhuge Jin and the others were happy to see this. After all, they were from the same sect. It was better to be united. In the end, Zhuge Jin decided to share first place. The inner disciple competition is over. Top 10 disciples, Fong Qingshan and Pang Bo, are tied for first place. Zhang Xian is second, Jiang Shan is third, Di Yi is ninth, and Nie Yun is 10th. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. Of course, it wasn't really the sandpiper and the clam. It was just a coincidence. When luck comes, it can't be stopped. The fact that Fong Qingshan and Pang Bo were tied for first place did not have much impact on Li Mubai and the others. It didn't have much impact on Shui Yunjian and the others, but for Nie Yun, who was stuck at the 11th place, it was a meteoric rise. He took advantage of it, and now there was one more person in the top 10 inner disciples. For a moment, Bu Yanran, Ling Bo, Shui Yunjian, and the others looked at Nie Yun with eyes full of envy, jealousy, and hatred. They couldn't wait to be in his place. The top 10 and those who weren't were treated differently, just like the first and second place. Not only were the rewards different, but the status was also completely different. They had only heard of the top 10, but not the top 11. Not to mention them. Even Nie Yun himself was dumbfounded by this sudden pie. It didn't matter whether it was Bu Yanran and the others who were envious, jealous, or the dizzy Nie Yun or the others. Rumble. As soon as Zhuge Jin's voice fell, it was as if she had spoken the law of heaven. For a moment, the entire Tao Will sect shook, and then a huge phenomenon appeared. Heavenly flowers fell, golden lotuses appeared on the ground. Wonderful sounds filled the air, and the whole world celebrated. Roar! In the sky above the Tao Will sect, wisps of purplish golden light appeared without warning. These lights were like clouds and mist, condensing in the void, turning into wisps of purplish golden auspicious clouds that began to gather. They began to take shape. Unknowingly, they had already begun to expand. In a flash, they covered the sky and the earth, turning the sky above the Tao Will sect into a purplish golden ocean. The Sea of Merit Luck. This was all the merit luck that the Tao Will sect had gathered since its birth. During this period, there were ups and downs, and there were ups and downs. The Sea of Merit and Luck also varied in size, thickness, density, and density. In particular, during the period when the venerable Emperor Patriarch died, the entire Sea of Merit Luck had almost dried up and disintegrated. Now, seeing this vast ocean again, Zhuge Jin and the others almost cried tears of joy. Although it was not as prosperous as when it was in its heyday, it was clearly showing signs of flourishing. Good. God bless the Tao Will sect. With the current development trend, the revival of the Tao Will sect is really just around the corner. If I can see the Tao Will sect prosper in our hands, I can die without regrets. A teacher for a day is a father for life. Once one entered the Tao will sect, one would be a member of the Tao will sect in life, and a ghost of the Tao will sect in death. This cohesiveness was a very important part of the reason why the Tao will sect did not fall like the other forces after the venerable Emperor Patriarch died. Many old fellows had experienced the Tao will sect's golden age and passed through the Tao will sect's lowest point. Now, when they saw that the Tao will sect had a chance to rise again, even with their mental state, they couldn't help but be slightly unable to maintain their composure, and all of their eyes brimmed with hot tears as their entire bodies trembled. Seeing this, the people of the fluttering snow palace, the Freedom Sect, and the martial Apex Sect fell silent. Chapter 1477. Seeing the high morale of the Tao will sect and the joyful expressions of the people of the Tao will sect, the people of the fluttering snow palace, the Freedom Sect, and the martial Apex Sect all fell silent. Compared to those geniuses, they valued this sense of belonging to the sect more. It was like comparing a person's talent. In fact, some people valued willpower and state of mind more. As big sects and forces, they knew better how rare this was for a sect. As the saying went, if the people's hearts were scattered, it would be difficult to lead the team. It was the same for a sect. If there was no cohesiveness, which was the sense of identity the disciples had for the sect, then even if the sect was not attacked, it would not be far from collapsing. However, if this sense of identity was strong, then no matter how difficult it was, there would be a time when the clouds would disperse and the moon would shine. This was the case with the Tao sect. Normally, after a venerable emperor ancestor died, the power of the sect would be greatly reduced or even unable to recover. Even if they could recover, they would have to wait for geniuses to appear and break through to venerable emperor. However, the Tao sect did not decline too much. Of course, this was because of their conduct, many allies, the level 4 supreme treasures in the sect, and their deep heritage, etc., but the most important thing was still the people. Because of Elder Tan's sacrifice of his future, because of almost all the seniors in the sect who supported the younger generation, because of the disciples in the sect, everyone was united and united, because of the unity of will, because of it was not that the other sects did not have this, but the power of the Tao will sect was more condensed and powerful. Therefore, the Tao will sect could walk out of its decline so quickly and move towards prosperity. The people of the Tao will sect did not know what the people of the fluttering snow palace, the Freedom Sect, and the martial Apex Sect were thinking, and they did not care at all. At this moment, no one even noticed the group of old guys in the Tao will sect sighing with emotion, let alone them. Now, most people were attracted by the sudden appearance of the Merit Lux Sea. After the appearance of the Merit Lux Sea, not only did the vision in the world not stop, but also became even more turbulent. A dragon roar sounded into the sky, shaking the clouds and spreading in all directions. All of a sudden, a purple-gold true dragon swam in the sea of meritorious luck, overturning rivers and seas, moving clouds and summoning rain. This true dragon was vivid and lifelike, exactly the same as a real living creature of the dragon clan. Its eyes were bright, and its dragon might was like a prison. It didn't seem to be any smaller than the Fist Emperor's mark from before. True dragon of fate. If the sea of karmic luck and virtue was said to be formed by the accumulation of karmic luck and virtue, it was like a federation alliance that was in a state of disunity, and the karmic luck true dragon was the condensation of its essence. Roar! The moment the true dragon appeared, a true dragon of providence appeared above the heads of everyone in the Tao sect. It soared into the sky and roared at the sky. However, there were big and small dragons, purple, gold, and silver dragons. The moment these true dragons appeared, they worshipped the true dragon in the sky. In an instant, it formed a scene of 10,000 true dragons worshipping the heavens. That wasn't all. After the true dragon appeared, it opened its mouth and spat out. It wasn't dragon breath, nor was it dragon pearl. Instead, it was a list. It was a huge list that flickered with purple divine light, and was full of sacred majesty. It was as big as the sky and was engraved with boundless Tao will. As long as it had appeared in the Tao will sect before, it would be better to say that it was the general outline of the Tao will sect's cultivation rather than a list. The moment it appeared, everyone in the Tao will sect felt a faint connection with it. The only difference was whether it was strong or weak. This item was the Tao will sect's true treasure. Just like the Great Qian Empire's imperial jade seal and Fangqing Shan's all-heaven chessboard, they were all treasures that could suppress karmic luck. A level 4 treasure. The Tao will list. It was still above the 4 Seas 8 Desolations sword and the state umbrella when they were at their peak. When the Tao will sect's venerable emperor patriarch died, the sea of karmic luck and virtue was still intact because of this item. Putting this matter aside, the Tao will sect's current achievements could be said to be thanks to this item. During the Desolation era, the reason why the 3 Taoist sects could develop like the sun in the sky was because they had treasures that could suppress karmic luck. As for the Western Buddhist sects, because they did not have treasures to suppress karmic luck, they were still suppressed by the 3 Taoist sects even though they had 2 sages. From this, one could see the benefits of treasures that could suppress karmic luck. Of course, they complemented each other. It was also thanks to the Tao will sect that this treasure could advance to where it was now. This was also the special nature of treasures of karmic luck. If they worked together, both sides would benefit, and if they failed, both sides would suffer. The stronger the force, the denser the karmic luck, and the faster the karmic luck would advance, and the stronger its power would be. Just like the 2 magic treasures of the Great Qian Empire that Jiang Shan had, the 4 Seas 8 Desolations sword and the state umbrella, these 2 magic treasures might not be comparable to the Tao will list back then, but once they were strengthened by the people's will and karmic luck of the Great Qian Empire, their power would definitely increase by more than 3 levels. However, with the destruction of the Great Qian Empire, they were now comparable to some level 3 treasures. Even if they were not severely damaged, they would probably only be the weakest among the level 4 treasures. As the saying went, success and failure were all due to the same person. If he relied on external forces too much, once there was a problem with the external forces, he would also have problems. Putting all of this aside, with the appearance of the Tao will list, an even greater wave of strange phenomena appeared. In the sky, a large conch was blown, a large drum was beaten, and heavenly sounds were heard. Endless divine light bloomed. One after another, the phantoms of the Tao will sect's magnates appeared in the sky, including the Tao will sect's venerable emperor ancestor who had already died. The spectators were dazzled, especially those from small forces and those with low cultivation. For individual cultivators, this was really a worthwhile trip. This time, the Tao will sect's inner sanctum competition was really exciting. Not to mention all kinds of geniuses, all kinds of divine powers and spirit treasures emerged one after another. Now, there was even a full-fledged level 4 treasure, the imprints of 2 venerable emperors. For them, it was difficult to even see 1 or 2 level 3 treasures for ordinary divine emperors, let alone venerable emperors. The crowd's exclamations and discussions obviously did not affect what was happening. With the appearance of the Tao will list, whoosh. Suddenly, rays of divine light descended from the Tao will ranking. These rays of divine light rapidly tunneled into the disciples participating in the inner court grand competition. Of course, not every inner court disciple was able to obtain it. Only those disciples who performed well and were in the top 100 would be able to obtain it. However, they were merely getting a mouthful of soup. The ones who were truly eating the meat were Fangqing Shan and the others who were in the top 10. The top 10 disciples were recognized by the sect and were the future of the sect. In fact, the stronger they were, the stronger the providence they would receive back to the sect. In this way, they would naturally receive providence, which was also a kind of increase in authority. However, there were also differences among the top 10 disciples. Fangqing Shan and Pang Bo, who were ranked first, received more than double the providence of Zheng Xian, who was ranked second, not to mention Di Yi and the others. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.